Good evening, race fans, and welcome to the 100% Cup Series for the Buddy Green Memorial 500 here at Talladega Super Speedway for round number 3 of the playoffs here for the 100% Cup Series. My name is Mason Heimbaugh with Team Goon Squad, joined today by Drew Akers with Downshift. Excuse me, Drew. I'm gonna let you properly introduce yourself. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, I am. Yeah, my name's Drew Akers. I represent Downshift Esports and everyone that's enjoying in that community. They are a great group of guys. But glad to be up here in the booth with you for this great Talladega race today, Mason.
Absolutely, Drew. It's going to be a fantastic one here today. We have an excellent race. 500 miles of racing here around Talladega. 188 laps in total. It's going to be a fantastic race for everyone watching today. It's going to be an interesting one for everyone. It's got a little bit of a tri-oval action here today, so we're going to see a lot of interesting action as we have a little over a 2.5 mile track here, so there's plenty of space for drivers to get around one another and make some plays happen for themselves here today, as there are also a lot of drivers here who are competing very closely in points. Now, I would also like to point out today that Carlos Acosta is not able to be in the booth with us today, producing today's event. So I will be taking the helm in the production booth as well. So I do not have the display for everyone to see on their screen, but we will try and talk about as much as we can and fill in the gaps where we can. Now, as drivers get ready to wrap up their warm-up for today and get ready to race, Drew, what are your expectations for today? What do you think today's going to be like?
I mean, today is going to be a long one, Mason. It's 188 laps, 500 miles around Talladega today. It's gonna be grueling for these drivers, more than likely. It's nothing that they're not accustomed to, however, clearly, as it is the 100% Cup Series. And so a lot of these drivers just really need to look forward to the end of the race. I mean, the stages are going to help as well, with those stages being at the 60, 120 marks in between 188 laps. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, your car just needs to stay clean. You need to have that clean car in order to get the most aerodynamic advantage with the other competitors. And with such a big track like Talladega as well, it creates that environment for pack racing. So it's going to be real crucial for everyone to keep their cars clean today, and I think that's probably going to be the biggest impact on these drivers.
Absolutely, and as we get ready to get this race started, let's walk ourselves through the starting grid here. Jonathan Delaney leading first, Adam Benefiel in second, Dustin Hall in third, Kevin Steele in fourth, Sean O'Brien Jr. in fifth, Jason S. Taylor in sixth, Damaris Hickenbottom in seventh, Cameron Stone in eighth, Dalton Mobley in ninth, Preston McRae in 10th,
Alex Murray sits in your 11th spot. Bradley Brandon in the 12th spot, the number 89 car. Cody Porter, Robert Tracy rounding out that row. Randy Drumhiller, as well as Brandon Pierce in that row as well behind them. Patrick Mucci, I think it is, and Cody Strom also sit towards that ninth row. And then Matthew Gaskins and Brian Mabry round out that 10th row.
You also have Bryson Hicksonball at 21st, and Tanner Knoll in 22nd. In the 11th row, Lucas Hoitzma and Mike Tellier in the 12th row. And I believe that is the end of our... We actually have a few more drivers here. We have Devin Medarus in the 25th, and Brandon White in 26th, Ryan Samuelson in 27th, and last but certainly not least, Mason Lowry in 28th. That is going to be our field for today. Wow, 28 drivers here today at Talladega. It's going to be quite the exciting one for everyone watching here today, as well as all of these drivers getting started, getting ready to rock and roll here as the pace car heads out onto the field, takes these guys around the track and get ready to go here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these guys go off the start, because it's going to be all the pack racing in the world off the first few turns, and once these guys start to get into a rhythm where these guys are able to bump each other, it's going to be interesting to see how the packs separate. But look out for Jonathan Delaney up in that first spot. He's going to get a great start every time.
Jonathan Delaney, Adam Benefield, both excellent drivers here in the 100% Cup Series. They also have Kevin Steele and Dustin Hall right on their tail as well. Both another set of great drivers as well. A lot of these guys here out in the front of the field are very used to being up here. And a lot of these guys are very good at pack racing, being very close to one another. We see these guys go 2, 3 wide very often, sometimes even 4 wide if the opportunity allows it. As these guys get ready to rock and roll here, green flag is out. And Jonathan Delaney is going to lead the field here with Adam Benefield and Dustin Hall going side by side. We have Dustin Hall actually got around that number 83 of Adam Benefield quite easily. He's now going to be second with Adam Benefield trying to gain some speed and get around the guys that have just passed him. But a lot of speed coming out of this train here from the 1, the 37, and the 65. You can see it on your screen now. These guys are going very fast around this track. Excellent racing that we're seeing so far. Jonathan Delaney, like you said, Drew, he had quite the start there, and it's working out in his favor, but will he be able to maintain it as he's getting some pressure starting to build up behind him, and quite a bit of it?
Yeah, he was able to get a great start, like we said. It's always beneficial for you to get that inside spot, and for Jonathan Delaney, it was nothing short of what he's done before. There was a good move early on into turn 1 as well by the number 37 Jason S. Taylor. He decided to go down the inside once he got the clear from his spotter. Now sits in 3rd place, but as these guys are starting to go single file, it's just going to turn into a big long line of cars, and we're just waiting for that one car to push the other.
And as you can see on your screen here, these guys are absolutely taking it around the track as hard as they can, and you can see in the front of the field how well these guys are able to maintain their line, especially how close you can see Dustin Hall is getting to
Absolutely.
that number 9 machine of Jonathan Delaney, almost touching that bumper of Jonathan Delaney. It's very, very close action that we're seeing here. Very impressive from all of these drivers here leading in the front of the field. And Drew, honestly, it's this whole line of drivers that we're seeing here. It's just absolutely impressive just seeing it on your screen here now. There's just not a whole lot of room between these guys, not even half a car width between them, and they're just pedal to the metal.
Yeah, it's it's gonna be one of those races where, because it's a super speedway, you're gonna find just a lot of these guys either sitting back, just chilling behind that draft of the car in front of them, or they're gonna try and push that other car to try and get the advantage. They want to, if someone wants to get up into the front of the pack early on, they're gonna make it known. And with how big this field is, it's also just very surprising and it just shows the talent between these guys, that just the top 26 drivers out of all 29 tonight are within a second of each other in the qualifying brackets. So you're already seeing some of that split happen in that back row, and I think that's the number 59 of Cody Strom back there. I'm not quite sure. He is running up the front pack, but like we said before, some of these guys are probably just going to sit back. That second pack, if they get too far away from the first, they're in for a long night, Mason.
Yeah, Drew, you hit the nail right on the head there. It's these long stint races can definitely be very detrimental to a lot of drivers that don't come, I don't want to say unprepared, but maybe they're just not expecting the race to go the way that they think it's going to. They might think it's going to be easier than it might be, or maybe not. Maybe they have a completely different mentality, and maybe they just want to have fun and just be in the race and be involved. That's the beauty of sim racing, and that's what brings people together for these types of events. But if you're someone who is coming into this event wanting to perform well, you're definitely not going to want to find yourself in this position where you're having to bob and weave your way through the field to gain positions. Now, you might be able to save your tires a little bit more, save fuel. You won't have to push your car nearly as hard, but in the case of Cody Strom in the 59, he's at the very tail end of this string of drivers here in the front of the field, as we'll say. He's currently 17th right now, but he has no support behind him. He's kind of just pushing that car through all of that air in front of him. Now, normally, if you're in the front of the field, this is generally okay. You're able to just kind of be alone and make moves where you can. But when you're having to push that car as hard as you can to catch up to everyone else who has the advantage of draft support and other drivers kind of helping them go a little bit faster through these straightaways, Cody Strom is he's definitely going to be working that car a lot harder than the people in front of him. So if I'm Cody Strom, I would be hoping for people in front of me to be making mistakes, slipping up, slowing the rest of the field down just a little bit so that way you can catch up. And as you can see there, he catches up just a little bit, but not enough to make it worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's going to handle this. He is at the tail end of the entire pack, but if he's able to take his lines like he should, keep down into that line of the draft, he should be able to recover fairly quickly. It's going to depend on his reactions, though, and as we saw just like a lap or two before, the back pack, that back tail of the pack, of the second pack, they were shuffling around as some of these guys weren't necessarily happy with Brian Mabry's pace in that number 3 car. So there were 2 wide, 3 wide even at times. So now leading that pack is the number 63 of Bryson Hickson-Baugh now, and he sets the pace for them. So lots of early movement in the back because I don't think a lot of these guys are very happy that they're falling behind early.
Yeah, and it's very disheartening too when you have that happen to you this early on in the race and you're finding yourself falling further and further back in the field, whether it's in position or in just pace. It can be very difficult to try and gain that lost time back, and that can kind of be a little wearing on the mentality of a lot of these drivers. You might be thinking you're going to have a great race, and having these kind of incidents happen where, not necessarily incidents, but just having these moments where you're finding yourself slowing down, maybe not to any fault of your own, but just, maybe the field around you just isn't cooperating the way that you think they would. It's forcing you to have to take precautions so that way you can save your car and save your race. There's a lot of different contributing factors to why you can find yourself in this position, but yeah, Drew, I gotta agree with you. It's very, very sad for Bryson right now. I'm sure he's probably a little sad in that seat right now, but he's still doing what he can. He's leading the little string of drivers he's got in front of him in 18th currently, so yeah, he's feeling pretty comfortable. I'm hoping that he'll be able to see himself out in the front of the field again here, but we'll see as the race progresses and as we see stage changes happen here. You might be able to make something happen here in that 63.
Yeah, the stage changes are going to be crucial for these guys, especially with the guys that are falling behind in that front pack. It's going to give them a chance just to recover, evaluate their strategy, evaluate what they did wrong, and try and correct it in the tail end of the race. But something I'm noticing as well, Mason, is the number 71 of Rob Tracy has completely fallen off of both packs. He now sits somewhere around 13 seconds away from the leaders and even 6 seconds away from the second pack that's running currently. So Rob Tracy not sitting in a great spot, especially with a super speedway like this. You never want to get hung out to dry. You always want to try and stay with some kind of a pack, even if it's just 2 drivers, because 2 drivers can make up a lot more ground than just one hitting that clean air.
Yeah, you hit the nail right there, Drew. It's very difficult when you're all in your lonesome in the back of the field having to work your way back. It's nearly impossible to make anything happen at that point. Your race is almost done, but I think in Rob Tracy's position at this point, I would be hoping for when everyone starts to come into the pit road for their expected pit window, which is going to be around 30 to 36 laps here today.
Something like that, yeah.
So, there's a little bit of an opportunity to try and catch up, but like you said, Drew, you have to make changes and you have to fix the mistakes that you're making in order to make that work in your favor. Otherwise, you're just going to find yourself in the same position over and over and over again. And I don't think any driver here wants that for themselves tonight, especially drivers that are still in play for the playoffs as far as points. You definitely, if you're if you're in that position, you definitely don't want to be in this position that Rob Tracy's in right now.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you want to be experiencing at this moment. I'm not quite sure what may have made him fall off, because I went back to the tape and I just couldn't find anything that may have led him to just lose any kind of pace. He fell just looked like he fell from the draft there, Mason. And again, it's detrimental to your race. He now 2 laps later, or 3 laps later possibly, is now 20 seconds behind the leaders. So Jonathan Delaney, right up on that front pack, still is leading all these laps, and he's coming for those lap cars very quickly.
Yeah, Jonathan in that number 9 machine, he's a very fast driver here, and I think a lot of the drivers behind him, well, there's a couple different things that some of these guys might be thinking. Jonathan Delaney is a very excellent driver here. He's a very consistent driver.
Absolutely.
We've seen him up in the front of the field multiple times this season. So if I'm behind Jonathan Delaney right now, I definitely don't want to be in front of him. I would want to stay behind him as long as I possibly can. Dustin Hall is doing an excellent job of that. He hasn't moved from second place, and neither has Jason S. Taylor in third currently in that number 37 machine. All of these guys are doing an excellent job just maintaining their pace. Dustin Hall's just giving a little bit of love taps there, it looks like, to Jonathan Delaney. I love to see that. But it just goes to show how well these guys are performing here today. These guys are absolutely killing it as far as just putting on a spectacular race so far. I mean, we're lap 14 currently, and these guys have not budged an inch as far as where they've been in the field.
Yeah, and one thing to mention as well, like you were saying earlier there, Mason, Cody Strom got left behind from that front pack. He was not able to keep up with them and now sits just in between both of the packs. So he is getting caught by Bryson Hicksonbaugh very quickly, and you know, he probably doesn't want to move any farther back, even though it's this early in the race. It has only been just about 15 laps, 16 laps coming to the line now, but you never want to get too far too early. It's very hard to recover, especially by yourself. However, there's always the benefit of cautions at any time. Lucky dogs are in play. The first driver that's down a lap always gets that lucky dog. So there could be some benefit to some of these guys who are just wanting to maybe save some tires, save some fuel maybe, if they think that it's a problem at any point. But we'll have to see. You know, it's not until a caution comes out or the stage caution comes out that we get to see it. And right now we're halfway through the stint for these guys. We'll see how everyone files into the pits when these stints go down.
Yeah, you know, and I'm really curious to see who is going to be kind of the star here as far as who's going to stay out the longest. Who is going to really abuse those tires and try and push these cars to the absolute limit. Jonathan Delaney, you know, it's a really tricky position that he's in. Normally, I would say if you have a gap that you can kind of work with and pit, you know, that use it. Absolutely use it.
Yeah,
but in Jonathan Delaney's case, he does not have that. He does not have any sort of gap whatsoever. And Dustin Hall, Jason S. Taylor, all of these guys in the front of the field currently, I believe all the way up to, position 10, maybe even a little further back. All of these guys are going to have to pay attention to one another and see when one another pits, and kind of hope that that it plays in their favor, because a lot of these guys are going to have strategies up their sleeves. I've seen it week in and week out from these guys. These guys are very, very strategic in how they play out these races, and it'll be very interesting to see what a lot of these guys are able to do here tonight.
Yeah, you did mention as well that, you know, you never want to be in front of anyone who's faster than you, such that John Delaney leading that front pack has shown that he's got the speed and the speed over a lot of people. So, you know, if you get in front of him, he's probably going to move you regardless. But it's just a question of when do you want to make that move? What kind of strategy are you going to try and put on? Because these guys can probably make these tires last as long as they want. The fuel is the difficult part. The fuel is what's going to put these guys into the pit lane probably faster than these tires will. Don't get me wrong, tires will wear and you'll start sliding up the track even with this heavy banking that we have at Talladega today. But you always have to be careful when it comes to these strategies and these pit lanes as well. You always want to make sure you hit the mark of trying to get the speed right before you hit that cone, because if you go down 20 seconds into a penalty, that just might be your race over.
Yeah, and man, Drew, you said it right there. That's all it takes for your race to be completely over. That's all it takes. And a lot of people that are new to racing and kind of don't quite understand that concept, that time is absolutely vital in racing, and that 20 seconds can make or break your race. It's very, very interesting to see, what can happen for a lot of these drivers who, at the start of the race, they're leading the field, they're looking excellent, and then they pit and something happens, and then all of a sudden they're out of the race. It's like, what happened? And that's all it takes. It's very interesting to see when that happens. It's very interesting to see. It's very sad to see for a lot of these drivers that have that happen to them. But we'll see if that happens to anyone here tonight, as we're getting a little bit closer to that expected pit entry here. We're on lap 20. We're gonna have about another, I'd say maximum about 20-25 laps before people are going before these drivers are going to have to start to pit and get at least some fuel. Drew, you might disagree with me a little bit here, but I think that some of these guys might just stay out on the track with the tires that they have and try and last until the next stage, and then get fresh tires during the next stage. That seems to be a fair play.
It seems to be that could be one of the strategies. With 6 tire sets in total for these guys, I'm not entirely sure if that's what they would say on their part, or their spotters might be shaking their fist at you just a little bit, being like, why are you giving away my strategy? But it's going to depend on how these guys really handle their tires. Again, with John Delaney currently in the front of the pack, they may not be too far, or they might not be doing as well with their tires as everyone behind them, such as Dustin Hall and Jason Taylor. With them having the drafts, they have the ability to just lift and coast into the corners rather than pushing it full throttle. The tire wear really does matter in ovals, even if it's down to just 1% of that tire wear. The grip is significant, especially when it comes to ovals. And the weather doesn't help either. It's a little bit sunny out right now. I think we're going to get some overcast later on, so that would help the tires for these other guys. But I don't know. I personally, if I was in these guys' shoes, I might take a set of tires on this next pit stop when it opens here in just a few laps.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with you there, Drew. Having that, even that marginal advantage as far as grip is concerned on those tires, even if you're only getting maybe one side replaced, maybe some drivers want to get the right side replaced, or maybe even just one specific tire replaced even. It's purely preference, but the point being, some of these guys may just want to have just that little bit of an advantage over the guy behind them. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, this is a race. You want to perform as best as you can, and for the guys that are in the top of the field right now, Jonathan Delaney, Dustin Hall, Jason S. Taylor, that's going to be absolutely key to them. They're going to find themselves probably dropping back in the field a little bit, but that's to be expected. That's going to happen. But having that little bit of an advantage on their tire, having fresh, having more fuel available to them to be able to push that car and work their way back up through the front of the field, hopefully it'll work out in their favor. hopefully we'll see some interesting strategies here as these guys get ready to enter their expected pit window here. We're on lap 24 currently now. These laps take a little bit longer than normal as it's a 2.5 mile course here, so it takes a little bit of time for these guys to get around, but these guys are taking it around the track quite quickly. Let's take an onboard lap here with Dustin Hall, who's currently second in that number 1 machine, and let's take a listen to just how fast he's taking it around this track here. Alright, so you could hear it there. Dustin Hall in that number 1 machine. You could it almost sounded to me like he didn't even lift off that throttle almost at all, if at all. Maybe just a little bit going into the turns, but it sounded like he was just pedal to the metal that whole way through. Just very impressive to hear that. You can hear these guys coming into, I believe this is turn 3 or 4. It's just absolutely insane how fast these guys are taking these cars around these track and how well they're able to keep these cars on their lines, taking these low lines very, very nicely, very clean, and very close. And still, from the beginning of the race, we're on lap 27 now, and these guys have not budged from their spots. Very consistent, very clean, very excellent racing from everyone here in the front of the field right now.
Yeah, and like we said before as well, some of these guys might just be content with letting the guy who has shown his speed all throughout the season just shine and pull them around. Jason Delaney, not necessarily foreign to the top spot, as he's won, I think he's won probably a good 10 races out of the season, maybe just a couple fewer, but he's not shy in terms of getting his car to the front, and some of these guys I think are pretty content with letting him pull them around. As you said, Dustin Hall I don't think was lifting too much, if at all, there, so it's pretty impressive to be able to watch how he takes the turn when following John Delaney. And as well, we were seeing speeds of up to 200 miles per hour in that draft. You know, I think John Delaney, who doesn't have any draft at all, is somehow managing to keep up speeds northward of 190 and somewhere. It looks like we're going to have some of our first pitters going in right now.
That's going to be Jason S. Taylor, Sean O'Brien Jr., Patrick Much, and Dalton Mobley, all pitting into pit road here currently. So, you know, these guys here, Jason S. Taylor, an interesting one to see here in pit road. He was actually third before going into pit road here. So that kind of bodes the question here. What's the strategy here for Jason S. Taylor? This is kind of early, I would say, for a pit strategy, but the first stage ends at lap 60. So pitting in, I would say, 1 lap more than kind of the expected window. I don't think it's going to hurt Jason S. Taylor too much. Maybe it might towards the end of the stint a little bit once we get ready to wrap up stage 1 here. But he's already back on the track here, getting ready to rip some more laps around the field. But you know, like we were talking about earlier, all these guys are going to have different strategies and different ideas for what they want to do as far as pit strategy. And this early on in the race, doing something like this, pitting early, I don't think it's going to hurt Jason S. Taylor. I think he'll be fine. But later on, once we get closer and closer towards stage 3 and kind of towards the end of stage 3. Taking a maneuver like that might not play in his favor, but we'll see. We'll see if it does.
Yeah.
But Jason S. Taylor's having a good race so far, and hopefully we'll continue to see that for him today.
Well, we'll have to see how it turns out for him. It's an interesting decision, to say the least. You know, pitting on lap somewhere around, I think it was lap 28 or 29 there. So a little bit early in terms of the pit stop strategy, because our pit window that we've seen is typically somewhere around 33 to 36 here. However, if he is thinking that he may be able to just outlast some of these guys, and now we see even more drivers into the pits of Adam Benefiel, Dustin Hall, who was second place, Alex Murray, Brandon Pierce, Cody Porter, and Bradley Brandon, all currently in the pits, and a good race out of the pit lane to try and keep those spots. But it's these strategies evolving, as well as we're seeing now some of the other lead cars now going in, and there was some cars sideways even going into the pits. There's one still in the grass as he goes down the pit straight. Hopefully he doesn't get a penalty for that. I don't know how race control is going to deal with it, but he is, I don't think he's even categorized as in the pits. Yeah, he is now out. So that was Cameron Stone in the number 57 car. As we're seeing these pit stops going, though, it's going to just create more differential from all of these guys, because some of these guys might not be able to get back into some kind of draft, and that could be detrimental to their race.
Yeah, Drew, you made a very excellent point there. You know, playing these strategies out is very, very vital to these super long races. 188 laps here at Talladega.
Speedways.
Yeah, super speedway. You know, as we heard earlier, these guys are not letting off these throttles whatsoever, going around these turns, around this track in general. So, really, the last thing that is going to be on these drivers' mind, other than racing, is making sure that their pit is absolutely perfect. It's, you know,
absolutely.
Making sure that you're in and out of that pit within, I would say, let's see, these guys have been putting around pit times of around 12 to 14 seconds. So if you're in that 12 to, I would say, 13-second range, you're looking pretty good. If you're anything beyond that, you're probably spending too long. You probably took some damage, and it's going to hurt your race. And you're probably going to be out of the race in the long term. As we start to see a load of drivers come into the field here, we have the 86 going sideways, bumping into the wall.
Oh my God!
Absolutely great. That's going to be Brandon White in the number 86 there, coming in pit road just a little too spicy.
Yeah, like we said before, you've got to make sure that your pit stops are spot on. This is all of the second pack, if I'm not mistaken, so they may come around just a little bit ahead of everyone that they're competing with, but definitely don't want to do what the 86 was doing in terms of spinning right there. So he's got to be careful with that. These guys are now filing into the second, or behind that first pack that pitted earlier, and now we see a new leader at the top of the order right now, and that is Lucas Hoytsma, who we might see pitting here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, so Lucas is going to be the guy that, you know, kind of unexpected to see out here, but I always say in almost every broadcast now, there's always that one driver who is he's playing things a little bit differently, and it always seems to work out in their favor. But it seems like Lucas is he's took the message, and he's entering pit road. He's not going to try and play it out any longer. But Jonathan Delaney back out in first once again, with Damaris Hickenbottom and Adam Benefiel now in second and third behind him, all in a nice single file line. We have a little bit of lap traffic here. That's going to be the number 89 machine there, getting up to the top of the track there, letting these guys get around, have their race. But impressive racing from Jonathan Delaney, with a pit time of a little bit longer than everyone else. He had about a 14.45 second pit time there. It's a little interesting to see him able to come out into the front of the field this quickly again, but he's been a very fast driver here today. It's almost not surprising, honestly, to see him out here again this quickly, but that's going to be a big question here for our other two drivers that were out here, Dustin Hall and Jason S. Taylor, who Jason S. Taylor is currently 6th, or 5th now, actually, as he makes a pass around the number 46 machine of Patrick Much. But our other driver that we were looking out for, Dustin Hall, in that number 1, he's currently 20th. I believe he's lapped currently. He's currently... Yeah, so he's going to be 20th currently, so he's going to have some work cut out for him. Let's see if that let's see if he's able to regain some of that lost time, but he's got a lot of work to do with him, especially if he's got the lead driver right in front of him.
Yeah, and it's interesting that some of these pit times that we are seeing from these guys, there are a lot of cars that are already getting lapped by John Delaney, and Dustin Hall being one of them, who was sitting in 6th place before that round of pit stops. We're seeing some of these guys that took almost even 1 full minute into the pit stop, so you know it went bad for them when you see that time coming up on the timesheet, Mason, and I have to imagine it could have been something along the lines of they were speeding in the pit lane. You always have to prepare. If you have a spotter, have them tell you exactly when you're coming up onto that pit lane cone. But some of these guys are going to have to go out or pull it out for the long haul if they're going to have any chance of recovering their race.
Yeah, and the nice thing about these stage races is that it kind of gives these drivers an opportunity to make back what they lost. Now, it doesn't always end up working out that way, but if you're only down a lap, maybe 2 at the absolute most, on a track like this, being as long as it is, the amount of straightaway that you have and as much speed as you're able to gain, it's possible that you're able to get yourself around the track, get back that lost lap, and be competitive again in the field. But the problem with that is everyone else is doing the same thing around you, and you're having to work around everyone else trying to be as fast as possible as well. So again, I almost have to say that it comes down to drivers expecting the people in front of them making mistakes, slipping up just a little bit here and there, so that way they're able to capitalize on that opportunity, gain a little bit more speed, and try and work their way through the field. But a lot of these guys are very consistent and very clean. But we have a little bit of a shake-up here. Well, not at the moment, but with Damaris Hickenbottom and Adam Benefield now in 2nd and 3rd, it's a little bit of a different vibe here in the front of the field. Not quite too much. It's a little strange having the number 1 car here in the front pack, even though he's currently down a lap. But he's rocking and rolling. He's grooving with the field, and it's perfectly fine. The number 1 machine, he's not slow. He's not impeding on any of the other drivers' race. He's going just as fast as everyone else. So in the case of the number 1 machine, if you're able to maintain the pace that everyone else is setting, you don't have to get out of everyone else's way. You can keep racing and keep going. But for a lot of these other guys that you see going to the top of the field and letting drivers go by, it's usually because they're not able to set the same pace. So it's for the number 1 machine. It's very good to see that he's able to keep it out with the front of the field here and just keep his race going. With that being said, though, Dustin Hall, I think it would be beneficial for Dustin Hall to see him get a lucky dog. I don't think it's going to happen for him to be able to get that lost lap back, but once that stage restart happens, he might be able to make that happen here, but he's going to be set back all the way to 18th position starting out for that yellow flag restart. So it's gonna be interesting for Dustin Hall here, but we'll see how it plays out for him here as we are now entering lap 41 of 188. A little under 20 laps left to go here for the first stage here at Talladega.
Yeah, and as you were mentioning too, it's a little odd for the number 1 of Dustin Hall sitting in that little pack, and some of these guys might not even be happy with him sitting there because of the gap that he is putting between them and the leader of Jonathan Delaney. But it only matters if, you know, when you're behind a guy and they just start to drop from the guys in front. That's one of these guys, or that's what these guys have to be worried about, I'm sure, and that's probably what's on their mind. At any point, they could just lose the leaders, and that could very well not go well for them. They've got a decent enough pack to where they can make it back up, but it's going to be tough for them, as we do see go too wide there. I think that's I think that's number 65 going up to the top of the lane. Not quite, but he was below, and there was number 77 of Dalton Mobley on the top end. Dalton didn't necessarily have a great run there, and now falls just a little bit behind. We'll see if he can stay up with the pack.
Yeah, all of these guys here in the front of the field right now, it's impressive racing from every single one of these guys. The fact that they're able to maintain this pace this long in this race, 43 green laps. That's a long time to sit in the seat and keep things going here. And there's still a long race left to go here. We're not even at the halfway point yet, so there's still a long ways to go here for these guys. But right now, if everyone in the front of the field right now is looking good, and I think everyone's feeling pretty good right now too. Everyone's having a good race, and hopefully they're able to keep it going for the rest of the race here. But yeah, like you said, a lot of these guys having a little bit of shakeups here, kind of in the middle of the pack here in the front. Dalton Mobley being one of them, and that number 77 kind of getting dropped back there a little bit by Sean O'Brien Jr. But Sean O'Brien Jr. looks like he's on a mission here, actually trying to get on that bumper of the number 46 of Patrick Much. It almost seems like he's trying to take that top line around him. Now, it almost seems like the top line can work out for you here at Talladega if you're able to keep that speed going, but that low line, you're able to keep that car going a lot quicker going into the straightaway than when you're in that middle or high line, because you're having to slow down to avoid the wall.
Yeah, it's more beneficial for these guys to stay on the low line. The only time I think it would be beneficial to even go high line is if you've got a decent pack and a line forming with you. You know, these guys, we've seen these guys bump and run. We've seen these guys push each other to the limit at times. These guys are not afraid to get down and dirty with those bumpers, but you just got to be careful when and how you use it. If you use it too early, you might end your race in terms of, you know, not being able to get back at the guys who are behind you, and they have momentum. If you use it too late, you're just caught out dry and just not able to use it to your advantage like you probably would have liked. With 15 laps to go, though, majority of the field is only a lap down. So we'll see how everyone files in once this caution lap comes out for the stage. And I think Jonathan Delaney is probably going to be very happy to be sitting at the very front and get some more stage points for his terrific run he's had so far, Mason.
Yeah, Jonathan's definitely having the race of the week probably for himself, leading the field pretty much the entirety of this race. I think he's
pretty much
only hasn't led maybe 2 or 3 laps, but regardless, he putting on a clinic here for these guys at Talladega. Damaris Hickenbottom, Adam Benefield, all of these drivers here following behind that number 9 machine. Like I said earlier, I think these guys are they're very cautious about trying to get around that number 9. They definitely don't want to try and tango with Jonathan Delaney tonight. Oh man, that number 9 is absolutely fast. It's a monster on this track here. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially once we go into this yellow flag restart for stage 2. I'm very curious to see what Damaris Hickenbottom is going to be able to do, as well as even Adam Benefield and Brandon Pierce, who are going to be 3rd and 4th, if things hold out here for the next, I believe, 12, 13 laps. It's looking to be a very interesting start to stage 2 here.
definitely have to agree with you. And it's been an interesting week, I think, for Brandon Pierce himself. We asked all the drivers too. There were a good amount of questions going into this race, specifically from the owners of the 100 Cup Series, and they just wanted to get some insight from these guys. But Brandon Pierce, all these guys were asked at one point, this is the final super speedway of the season, so they wanted to know exactly what the expectations are and what the goals are for these guys in terms of Talladega. This is the last super speedway race, and probably one of the biggest on the calendar, if I'm honest. It's the second round of the round of 12 in this chase. John Delaney has already claimed his spot for the round of 8. He's already going on, but Brandon Pierce just never really, he kind of just said he never really had success on super speedways. He just always looking to try and better himself in terms of these kinds of tracks. One way or another, he's just going to fall in line and see where it takes him. So I think he's doing pretty well currently, sitting in that P4 spot. He's sat back, he's observed, he's tried to get carried around in terms of everywhere on this track, and looks to be doing very well for himself in that number 38 car.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon Pierce has he's been quite the contender here in the 100% Cup Series. Watching him the past few weeks that I've been here, always a very solid driver here. That Brandon Pierce always is usually, I want to say, not always in the front of the field starting out, but finds himself working his way through the field and eventually up and leading. Not necessarily leading, but at least in the top 5, top 10 in most
Absolutely.
cases. So, to see Brandon Pierce coming out here and improving week in and week out, continuing to work his way further and further up the field every single race. Now that he's third here at Talladega, very, very difficult track to try and be competitive at. It's very impressive to see that Brandon Pierce is doing as well as he's doing currently. I look forward to seeing him improve here in the rest of this series going forward. But if he can pull off a third place finish or a top 3 finish here today, as he drops down to 5th position currently, he's losing just a little bit of pace there, but he's trying his best. He's going to keep things rocking and rolling here. But if he's able to get a top 3 podium finish today and get himself a little bit more points for the playoffs, Brandon's going to be looking pretty nice.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's been great to see how these guys have improved. He's like we were saying earlier on, you've really got to hit your marks in terms of just everything with this kind of race on this super speedway. So any kind, with all these green flag laps as well, it's going to be crucial to handle those as best as you can. He's proven very good in terms of that so far, but as we're seeing him battle right now, he's stuck on the low line, and Jason Taylor on that outside line wants to make something happen. He is currently sitting in P5 now, as he just falls just tad behind Brandon Pierce and Patrick Much. But with 8 laps to go, there still could be a shakeup before the stage is over.
Yeah, anything can happen here, especially as we get closer and closer to these stage restarts here, as we start to see drivers go 3 wide here with lap traffic getting involved there. Not a whole lot of action there. Yeah, it can be very interesting to see what happens here. We're already seeing lap traffic being involved, so drivers are having to kind of navigate their way through that, getting closer and closer to one another. Like we said at the beginning of this broadcast, these guys are going to find themselves kind of bunched up into groups, kind of all over the field. So the pack that we've been following really hasn't changed too much in the 53 laps that we've been going around here at Talladega. We've had a few drivers kind of switch up here and there, but everyone that we're seeing here in this line currently has, for the most part, has been here for the entirety of the 53 laps that we've gone around Talladega so far today. So everyone having a very excellent race here. And, a lot of these guys here that are contending for points, some guys are going to be okay with the positions that they're in. you know, some guys might not want to be, you know, top 3. Maybe they do, you know, just to fluff the points a little bit. But some of these guys, they're going to be comfortable enough that they can say, okay, I'm okay with a top 10 finish, and that's fine enough for me. I'm still in the playoffs. I'm still in it for points, and it's not going to hurt me any. But then you have the guys that are kind of on the low end or at the cutoff point where it's like, okay, I need to really, I need to lock in today, and I need to put on my best performance and really make something happen here. So hopefully some of these guys that are a little bit further behind in points are able to kind of push themselves a little bit and make something happen and get at least a top 10, preferably a top 3 finish for their race here today. But 5 laps left to go here before we end our first stage here at Talladega.
Yeah, we'll see how everything shakes out. But like you were mentioning, though, some of these guys are probably content, especially with that of the second place Tamara Hickenbottom and the third place of Adam Benefield. I mean, they have already moved up so much with both of them gaining 11 and 23 spots respectively, but they're also sitting in that sweet spot where they are able to try and get some points, some crucial points, specifically for the next round of the playoffs as well. And in the middle of all that as well is Dustin Hall, who's just sitting comfortably right now, just riding the wave, as you would call it, probably just glad to be in the mix of something, I would have to imagine, as he's still a lap down. But this gives him the best chance as well of getting the lucky dog. So not to be dismayed is Dustin Hall, as he could very well have a great strategy on his hands.
Yeah, it could very well work out in Justin Hall's favor. I mean, like you said earlier, a lot of these guys that are in the front pack right now, they might be a little upset that he's even involved in this little pack here. But on the contrary, some of these guys might even want him up here. It might play in their favor a little bit. And in Justin Delaney, or in Jonathan Delaney's case, excuse me, it might play in his favor. If that number 1 machine stays behind him, which now he's actually passing the number 9, a little bit of a change up there, and actually we're having a little bit of a switch up here in the front of the field as we have Adam Benefield leading first and Jason S. Taylor in second now. Jonathan Delaney kind of falling back here as he's now going to be 4th. Wow. Oh, and we see a slip up from the number 83 of Adam Benefield. We were watching right as that happened. Oh, no, that's not going to be good for Adam Benefield. Go ahead.
As far as I can see, there's no caution either, so we're still green flag as he spins on the infield of the backstretch there. So very unfortunate for the number 83 car. I'm not quite sure what might have happened. I might have to try and see if there's a replay available somewhere, but very unfortunate for Adam Benefield right there. It's got to be heartbreaking. That was a bit of a change-up that we were seeing for the very first time as well, Mason.
Yeah, and as we're watching on our screen here, currently, you can see the 37 just barely get into the right rear, or excuse me, the left rear of that number 83, and it looks like Adam wasn't able to hold on to it.
Nope.
And just got loose. But as we were saying earlier as well, Drew, that's all it takes to make or break your race. That little incident, it's going to set Adam Benefield back quite a ways. He's going to be currently 11th now. He's probably not going to have a whole lot of damage to that car, so it's not going to be too much of a concern, but all of that time, all of that pace is lost, and he's going to have to gain that back somehow. But with only 1 lap left to go here for the stage change, or for the stage restart, it might not be that bad for Adam. He might be able to shake this one off and keep things rolling here, but only time will tell. So we still have a long race to go here. Let's see what happens here going into stage 2 as we take our final lap here for stage 1.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong in that aspect. You know, he's not going to be happy, of course, with what has happened, which also almost puts him a lap down, but somewhere in the middle, I would have to imagine. So he, even the littlest damage to his car might be a little bit detrimental. Hopefully his pit crew can be able to get as much of the repair as possible when it comes to this stage caution. But a great battle, as we're seeing in the front right now, as they're going into the exit of turn 2, with the number 9 of John Delaney up top. He currently has the momentum down the backstretch. We'll see what happens on this final turn here, Mason.
Yeah, very exciting action that we're seeing from these guys in the front of the field. Oh, we're going into turns 3 and 4. Things are looking spicy. Drivers are going too wide here. It's absolutely intense battles here. Very close. We saw a little bit of a slip up there.
Yeah.
Couldn't see what number that was, but
that was number 28 of Alex Murray. But regardless, he'll be going into the pits as the caution will fly here as this first stage finishes up. I think John Delaney, to no one's surprise, wins that one.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Delaney definitely was the champion for Stage 1 here today. Definitely put on a clinic for these guys. Led the majority of these laps. I think all but 1 or 2 during that first pit cycle. Very impressive performance here from Jonathan Delaney. Hopefully we'll get to see him continue that performance going forward here in the rest of the race as we get ready to enter our Stage 2 here. It's going to be another 60 laps, and then we're going to have a final. I believe it was, let me see. It'll be a final 100.
An interesting note, I was going to say how great that pit stop was, or the recognition was, for Alex Murray to dive into the pits right at the end of that stage to try and get ahead of the game. However, it seems like he has disconnected, so I'm not quite sure if there's something maybe that he wasn't happy about, or if he just didn't like, had some kind of problems on his end. But sad to see he is disconnected. Hopefully he gets back though just in time for the next stage.
Yeah, and sometimes that'll happen with a lot of drivers in these series. Sometimes you just aren't happy with how your car is performing. Sometimes it's just not as fast as you'd like it to be. Sometimes it's just not handling the way that you'd like it to. Maybe your internet's just not cooperating with you. A lot of different variables can come into play, but
I've had that experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, it happens to everyone, and it's no one is exempt from these problems. I would say at least every sim racer that I know has encountered one of these problems at least once in their sim racing career. So it's bound to happen, and it's unfortunate to happen, especially in a series like this. But if you feel like you're a detriment to the race and to other drivers, I think he made the right call. If that was the case, but if it wasn't, hopefully he's able to come back and finish out today's race.
Yeah, it didn't seem like anything was too off with his car, and nothing specifically off with his race either, so not quite sure what may have happened in that sense, but a great battle off the pit exit as we see Sean O'Brien take the first spot. He gets out earlier than John Delaney, but also had a 2 second faster pit stop time. So great strategy coming out from Sean, but I have to imagine that maybe he only took maybe 2 cars or two tires. So maybe just the outside tires for him. We'll have to see. But yeah, unfortunate for Alex Murray. I hope he's doing all right, but it's just one of those things. Sometimes you can, sometimes you are a little bit slow, but nothing seemed too off with his car or his racing that would make me think he should have pulled out of the race. Could have definitely gotten farther with some more points. Hopefully he'll be back to try and get some more of those, as well as great job on Dustin Hall. I think he's gotten the lucky dog, so he'll roll around after he is done with his pit stop.
Yeah, and that's very good to see for Dustin Hall too. As we mentioned earlier, he was second in the race before the first restart, or excuse me, before the first pit cycle, and then he found himself kind of back in the back of the field, if you will. So for him to be able to get this lucky dog, get this extra lap around the track and make up some lost time, it's going to work out in Dustin Hall's favor. Hopefully we'll be able to see him kind of come back out into the front of the field, leading some more laps with the top 3. He seemed to have a pretty solid car for today's race, so I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to work his way back through the field. He's got plenty of time to make that happen here in this race. So far has been very solid and very consistent, so you know, there's a lot of opportunity for Dustin Hall to be able to make that happen here today. It's just a matter of is his position in the field going to be enough to make that work here. But as we get ready to rock and roll here for this restart for the second stage, it might work out in his favor. He's going to be able to find himself in the groove with other drivers, get himself in a pack, and be able to get a little bit more speed going around this track. So hopefully he'll find himself around some drivers who maybe aren't making quite the same pace that he's able to, and get around them. And he's currently 15th now, so we'll check back in with him in a little bit, and hopefully we'll see him up a few positions.
Well, the good thing is, too, Adam Benefield, currently only 17th place, he has pitted, and I would have to imagine that he got any repairs that he needed done in that time frame. Still on the lead lap, so he's got a lot of ground he still needs to make up in terms of that, but he's probably just glad to be where he is currently, all things considered, with his circumstances. So great to see he's doing well. Dustin Hall, definitely not someone to sleep on in terms of trying to get back up the pack, but also someone we haven't really talked about, Mike Floppy, the Canadian in the 97 car, moved up 10 spots. He might be looking to try and move up the pack as well as Brian Mabry and Dalton Mobley, currently sitting in 9th and 8th place. They were all in that front pack. They were all fighting for that front spot, and I would have to imagine they're probably going to be looking to gain as much as they can before the next stage ends.
Yeah, this is going to be where things get a little bit interesting as far as getting themselves set up for the final stage, stage 3. Now, stage 2 is going to be not necessarily a repeat of stage 1, I would say. It's going to be one of those things where mistakes in this part of the race are going to be absolutely detrimental to your race. If you mess up now, it's if you mess up in this part of the race, it's not going to be good. You're going to find yourself in a very bad spot. You're probably not going to be able to compete for the rest of the race if you find yourself back in the field this late on in the race. There's still time to be able to make that happen, but green flag is out here. Sean O'Brien Jr. is going to be taking a gap here on the field with Jason S. Taylor and Jonathan Delaney behind him. Jonathan Delaney with a dive down to the bottom line. That was gave me a little bit of a skip there. I thought we were going to see a crash, but that was intense.
My heart jumped for a second. I thought that was going to be very, very, very scary, but you know, that's one of the things that Sean has been able to do so greatly in this entire season, is be able to place his car exactly where he needs to at the time that he needs to. And look at him already. He's on the back of the 37 of Jason Taylor, and he might be looking for an attack here in the next few laps. So just a little bit of a taste, you know, just a dabble of what John Delaney is able to do and what we've seen from him in the past as well.
Yeah, so I mean, Jonathan Delaney here, not afraid to make his presence known here at Talladega. He's a very solid performer here today. And Jonathan Delaney, he's putting pressure on that 37, like you said. He's given him a little bit of more room than I would say the other drivers were giving him early on. That number 1 machine of Dustin Hall giving him a little bit of a hassle earlier on in the race, but Jonathan Delaney currently just trying to find a groove here in the front of the field. All of the 5 drivers that we see on our screen currently in front are all playoff drivers. So all of these guys here, they're going to be fighting one another. You're going to have guys trying to defend positions and not let each other around. It kind of seems like Jason S. Taylor is kind of doing that here to Jonathan Delaney. It kind of seems like he's trying to block him from getting around, and That's the smart move to take here.
Yeah.
Trying to stay in front of that number 9 is, especially when you have a car in front of you that you're able to kind of squeeze between and use that draft support to your advantage. Yeah, I would say that's the right move to make there from Jason S. Taylor. Absolutely.
Oh boy.
Solid performance here, but we got a lot of action happening here.
Yeah, we got stuff in the back happening as well. As Dustin, I was taking a look at Dustin Hall trying to move up the pack. Dove out early in the previous lap on the back stretch, tried to get some kind of momentum. Wasn't able to, fell behind everyone, but momentarily we're 3 wide down the back stretch on this lap. So Dustin Hall trying to make some moves. Maybe a couple of these guys not really wanting for him to make some moves, as they want to try and get as much of a position battle as they can. But someone we didn't expect to join into or hop into the pits this early, Lucas Hoitzma, who currently sits in the pits and taking a 25-second pit stop at this very moment.
Yeah, as we say that too, he's gonna come out of pit lane, getting back onto the track here. Wondering what happened to Lucas to have him required to come into pit road there. Wonder if he was just having some. Yeah, wonder if he was just having some issues with his tires, perhaps, or a setup issue. I'm not really too sure what was going on there, but Lucas is just gonna get back on track and make things happen here. Hopefully that doesn't affect him or his teammate Tanner Noel going forward. But these guys are gonna keep things going here, keep the race going. But out in the front of the field here, we still have Sean O'Brien Jr. leading the field, with Jason S. Taylor still blocking that number 9 machine of Jonathan Delaney. And Jonathan is looks like he's about fed up with it, about touching the bumper of that 37, trying to see what he can do to get a pass on that 37 machine there. But just a little bit further back, in 4th position, we have Damaris Hickenbottom in that number 09 machine. He's also trying to make something happen here as well. But, you know, having Jonathan Delaney in front of you and then Brandon Pierce behind you as well, it's kind of a gamble of what you want to do here. You know, you're 4th currently. You're in the battle for points. I believe Damaris is also in the bubble as well as far as cutoff for points. So it's going to be crucial for Damaris to finish as high as he possibly can here in today's race. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong in that statement, but you know, for all 5 of these guys in the front of the field right now, every single one of them is going to be fighting for points. It's going to be vital for everyone to try and take the highest position that they possibly can. But man, Jonathan Delaney, you know, having led the majority of this race early on, being 3rd currently, and seemingly having a good bit of competition in front of him. You know, this race is kind of switching up a little bit. We have Sean O'Brien Jr. who's now leading the field and looking very solid. Jason S. Taylor as well. It makes me wonder if some of these guys maybe took some notes from Jonathan Delaney and made some minor tweaks to their cars while they were in that pit road during the stage restart, and wanted to make things just a little bit spicier going around this track here. What do you think, Drew?
I would have to agree in a sense, for sure. It's definitely the top 5, as you were talking about, are all playoff drivers, but everyone aside from that P3 driver of John Delaney, the win for them will get them into this next round, this round of 8 in 2 races time. So anything that they can do to try and get some kind of an advantage to try and win this race or get more points over the other drivers, they're probably going to take it. I don't think I would turn it down if it were my race on the line or my playoff spot on the line, but it's really just a good battle to see all of these guys trying to get as much as they can out of this race. And like you said, taking some notes out of John Delaney's book, you know, with Dustin Hall as well, a note, the number 1 car, now in that 2nd pack, pulling up to that front pack. He has made a tremendous move trying to get up to the pack. Like we said earlier, he was making moves to try and get up ahead of anyone who has lapped in front of him, and he's proven already that he's got the speed to get up to these guys, as he is now reaching that front pack and some of the stragglers.
Yeah, and as we're seeing on our screens currently, he is absolutely ripping that number 1 machine around this track currently, and with the draft support of the 83 and a little bit of well, the '08 as well, and the 24. This line of drivers here is kind of just helping Dustin Hall just push that number one as fast as they possibly can through these turns and catching up. And you know, right now the gap to at least the number 10 or the 10 position of the 97 of Mike Floppy, it's about 2 seconds to close, closer to 3 actually. So they've done a very impressive job of just trying to close that gap, and I don't think they're gonna be slowed up anytime here soon. That gap is still closing rather quickly. It's going to take them a little bit more time. I think we will start to see these guys kind of up in the top, at least 15, or excuse me, the top 10. I would say probably around the lap 80 or 85 mark. It's going to take them a little bit of time, but I think before we know it, we're going to see Dustin Hall here in the top 10 working his way back up and putting the pressure on the top 3.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it in the slightest. I mean, we're already seeing in that front pack just all the shifts that are happening as these turns progress in the straightaways. Some of these cars are kicking out as well, and I believe most of them are lapped cars. If they are part of that front pack, though, you kind of have to wonder what their strategy could be, as we now see a car, that of Rob Tracy, in the pits, so he will try to outlast everyone, as it would seem. But some of these cars are kicking out. It shakes things up in the back of the field. Only helps these guys in the front, because when these cars try and fall back into line, those cars that are right behind those cars falling in line, they're going to get a little bit loose. They're going to be a little bit scared, kind of be like, whoa, what's happening? And then they're going to fall. So it only helps Dustin Hall, but it also helps the front 3 or the front 5 even, wherever those cars kick out. So really got to be careful in terms of these decisions for these drivers who are just trying to stay at the front of the pack.
Yeah, it's going to be crucial for a lot of these drivers, their decisions on when to pit. We're getting a little bit closer to our next expected pit window here. It's going to be around, I think, 85 to 90. So we're getting a little bit closer to that expected pit window. I think a lot of these drivers, well, this is kind of an interesting thing, because as we've kind of touched on earlier already, we've noticed a lot of these drivers have only taken maybe fuel and, as we said, maybe one set of tires, maybe on one side. So it makes me wonder, are some of these guys going to be wanting to take another full set of tires? What's the strategy going to be here again? You know, this is a 2.5 mile track, so as we said, you know, tire wear isn't everything, but it is critical in your race. And when you're only focusing on maybe one side of your car, switching those tires out every pit, I mean, sure, that might work, but you're gonna have to change the other side eventually. It's really going to be interesting what a lot of these guys here that are kind of playing that strategy of only replacing one side first and then doing another later. Oh, man, especially these guys in the front of the field here in the top 5. Very close racing here this entire time, lap 77. And this gap, the gaps between the guys in the I'd say the top 10 to maybe the top 15, if you will, it hasn't changed hardly at all.
No.
We're seeing gaps of half a second to quarter of a second or less between, you know, the top 5, top 10. Absolutely impressive racing from all of these guys. And when you take that into consideration for pit strategy, when you go into pit road on these larger tracks, it can work out in your favor, because, you know, it takes these guys a lot longer to get around the track. It takes about 48 seconds currently for a lot of these drivers setting down times currently. So, and if we're looking at about 15-second pit windows, it can work for a lot of these guys. But you have to play it right. You have to do it just right.
And it's kind of a theme that we've been experiencing just over the course of this entire race, especially with super speedways in general. You know, we've expressed exactly just how big Talladega is and exactly what you need to do in order to combat that of John Delaney, who has shown that he's just tremendous in these races. It's you've got to hit your marks. If you don't hit your marks, one little thing can go awry. So these guys who have been running up to the front, Jason Taylor, Sean O'Brien Jr., Brandon Pierce, all those guys who are currently fighting for those playoff spots and keeping with John Delaney, have shown exactly that they just haven't faltered yet. And, you know, it's going to be up to them to be able to make sure they don't fault continuing on for the rest of this race. But I'd have to imagine that it's getting a little bit bittersweet for probably Sean O'Brien Jr. just leading all these laps, stoking in the dry air and all that he has to offer, as John Delaney sits currently 2 places behind him.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see what a lot of these guys in the front of the field are going to do here. One thing that I just kind of thought about too, now we mentioned this earlier for drivers following Jonathan Delaney. Now, we mentioned that staying behind the leader is kind of ideal. You know, you don't really have to worry about people overtaking you or trying to be too aggressive on you because you're not the leader. And now you still have to, you know, defend your position where you can and where it's applicable, but for the most part, when you're not the leader, you kind of can fall in place, let draft support kind of take you and your car, push that car around the track as fast as possible, maintain your pace, and it can also help with saving your fuel, saving your tires just a little bit, so that way later on towards the end of your stage, end of your stint, you can push that car a lot more aggressively than the rest of the field is able to. And I've seen it happen for a lot of these drivers here. It works out in their favor. So I think Jonathan Delaney right now, I think he's probably playing that strategy here of just taking it easy, just maintaining his pace. He's currently third. Nothing to bat an eye at. And you know, it's going to work out. I hope it works out for Jonathan Delaney if that's what he's going to do here today. And I almost think that he's going to, but there's also the chance that you have other drivers behind him that are going to do the same thing. Brandon Pierce is another driver who might be playing that same strategy. He's currently 5th, up 11 positions. An absolutely excellent driver here in this series in that 38 machine. So it's very possible that we could see drivers here that we haven't even mentioned yet come out into the top 5 or even top 3 and lead some laps here. It's all just a matter of who's playing what strategy and who's playing it better than everyone else.
And that's the thing too, is that strategy can work a lot of the times, especially if you are not very confident in your car's ability to be able to lead the pack. But in the case of John Delaney, I almost have to wonder, you know, is he questioning his car's power or its ability to be able to lead the packs at this point if he's just content sitting around? At the same time, he's probably already led enough laps to where he's comfortable that he doesn't have to worry. He's already proven himself, to himself even, that he's able to lead the packs, but it's almost detrimental significantly when you do have a better car. So that's why a lot of these times you guys see these cars kicking out to try and create a new line, get someone behind them, and try and push them to the front because they know they have the capability of leading this pack even farther possibly, or even away from anyone who has a chance of making it back up to them. So it's interesting how super speedways and pack racing works like that, but we'll have to see how everyone decides to deal with that, as it looks like we've had someone in the pits for a while there, Mason, Devin Medeiros. I wonder what happened to him.
Yeah, not too sure what's going on with Devin there in pit lane. He's been sitting there for a hot minute. I wonder if he's just having
that does not look good.
some issues with his rig there, or what's going on here. But looking back here in the front of the field and just kind of touching in on the fact that we're getting closer and closer to our next pit window here for stage 2. It's going to be interesting to see how the front of the field shakes up here. Who's going to pit first? Who's going to bite the bullet as far as who's going to take the lead, or who's going to drop from the lead lap, if you will, or even just from the lead pack. It's kind of hard to lose a lap here at Talladega unless you're in the pit road for an extended period of time, like in Devin's case, who has been in there for over 2 minutes now at this point.
Yeah, unfortunate if he's got some damage that just takes him out of the race entirely, but we'll have to see how he comes about in terms of anywhere that he might turn out. But you also have to remember these cars aren't necessarily the speediest in terms of acceleration. They do have a little bit of a build-up, especially on super speedways, to get up to speed. So a lot of the times when you take that early pit stop, you're gambling in terms of making it out in front of the guys who are already leading, or possibly making it in somewhere in the middle, or you might just be left out to dry, as we do see some of these guys now harking into the pits. And that is Brandon Pierce, Bryson Higginbaugh, Dustin Hall, Adam Benefiel, and Tanner Noel. So a lot of the same guys that we were seeing in the first pit stops, taking the first pit stops again.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see what a lot of these guys are doing here. You know, it's almost interesting to see. It almost seems like some guys are, they're thinking to themselves, hey, I just need to grab tires and fuel or whatever the case may be, but then they realize, oh, wait, I need to make a change to my setup or this or that. Sometimes you just kind of forget something going into pit road, and you don't realize it until you're back out onto the track and you start to feel your car again, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of can be the case for some of these guys that are coming into pit road again here for a third or fourth time even. But it's bound to happen for some of these guys. Not everyone's going to have a perfect race. There's always going to be issues for people. I would almost say it's rare for sim racers to have a perfect race every time. There's always something bound to happen for these guys. So for everyone that is having issues, they're doing a great job just trying to make something work and stick with it. And some guys are even making the decision to just drop out of the race entirely and take that back seat and kind of just take the L for the day. And you got to respect that decision when they make that. It's, not being a detriment to everyone else on the track and putting everyone else's race at risk, especially at a race like this. We're on lap 89, and so far it's been green and clean, and I would love to see it stay that way. We've only had a couple hiccups here and there from drivers, and none of them have thrown a caution yet, and that's very good to see. I'm very pleased to see that. Keeping things going here and letting these guys continue to just race and let these mistakes kind of sort themselves out, as you have 2.5 miles of track for drivers to work with. So I mean, there's plenty of time for these drivers to kind of sort themselves out and get back into pit road if they need to, or just get back on track and get racing again. It's anything can happen here in these races, and Talladega is no exception. I think this is one of those tracks where when you go into something like this, it's 500 miles, 188 laps. You kind of just have to hope for the best. You got to do what you can. You got to make the best of it. And for all these guys in the top 5 positions currently, it seems like we actually had a switch up there. We have Cody Porter now in 5th position as well. So, like I said, it's going to be one of those tracks where it'll kind of make or break your reputation, or if you will, or your skill. These super speedways are very demanding. They're very technical as far as keeping your lines consistent and clean. These guys make it look easy, but I can assure you that going this fast around these tracks in these cars, is not easy. It takes practice, and these guys look like pros, and they're making it look easy. 91 laps around this track. That is a long time to be out on the track, performing this well. So gotta give credit to these guys. Absolutely impressive.
Yeah, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it every time, Mason. It's like, these guys do it way better than I ever could, and that's why I'm up here in the booth with you guys. So it's never shocking to see how well these guys do. And oval racing, as much as some people may not know or may think that it isn't difficult, it is absolutely an art in terms of its own right. So that's something I'm learning every day. That's something that everyone else can learn every day, and I hope everyone just enjoys the art of oval racing and cup racing, as we see a lot of these guys now falling into the pits. A lot of smoke happening in terms of the brakes, but a lot of contact between these drivers as well. I think some of them even went off track.
Yeah, I saw 3 different drivers there all get involved in that little bit of a slip up there coming into pit road. We're probably going to see a lot of guys get penalized for that.
I would have to imagine, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that some of these guys are probably going to be served EOLs. They're going to have to be sent to the back of the field, or they might have to stay in pit road a little bit longer, get served those time penalties for coming into pit road so quickly or just so carelessly, as iRacing would lovingly put it sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to see what these guys, what the guys that
Well, a note as well, like off of that, we see Randy Drumhiller staying out as he will now come into the pits, but Mike Floppy coming out atop everyone with a 9-second pit stop, almost 10 seconds. Sean O'Brien, Jason Taylor getting 13, even 14-second pit stops at time. John Delaney even getting a 14.5-second pit stop. So a weird shakeup, especially with what we had coming into that pit lane, Mason.
Yeah, Mike Floppy up 22 positions from where he started in today's race. Absolutely incredible to see that from Mike Floppy. It took 93 laps for Mike to get up here, but man, did he earn it. Absolutely impressive for that number 97 machine. Mike Floppy's going to be leading the field here now. And, you mentioned it. He had a 9-second pit time. 9 seconds. That is about 5 seconds less than everyone else did. So it makes me wonder if Mike only took fuel, if he played the game a little bit smarter than everyone else, and he replaced his tires earlier in the first during the stage during the stage 2 start. If he got all of his tires replaced, and then decided to not get a fresh set for this pit cycle, and just get some fuel and just let her rip, and here he is leading the field. Is it going to work out for him for the entirety of the rest of this stage? I think so. I genuinely do. He's got Jason S. Taylor and Sean O'Brien Jr. closing in behind him, with John Delaney and Cameron Stone as well in that pack. Ooh, as actually we see all of these playoff drivers completely make their way around Mike Floppy. Mike's definitely going to be a little salty about that, I think.
I think so as well, and I was going to mention, as to your point, probably did take some tires earlier on and just refueled, because a 9-second pit stop is very, very short for this kind of track and this length of time. However, he was sitting ahead of everyone else all by himself, and that is the worst place you can be when you don't have someone that's right beside you to draft off of. With his unfortunate timing, or with his timing on the pit stop, he was able to lead at least a couple laps, but it's not going to take very long for those guys to reach up to you, and now he sits P5 and currently trying to catch up to the front of the pack, as we have some movement in the front, as John Delaney falls down now to around P5. So Cameron Stone, a new leader in terms of this race.
Yeah, very interesting to see that happen for Jonathan Delaney. That's very odd Jonathan off his pace now quite a bit. He's going to be P5 now. He dropped back quite a little bit, and he's still dropping back, actually, it seems like. He's not able to keep that car, it seems, as fast as he was able to before, as he's starting to get lapped by drivers that are in 7th, 8th currently, and continuing on. But as you said earlier, when you have drivers who are in packs behind you, you don't have a whole lot of draft support around you, those pack drivers are going to pass you very quickly, very easily. Those guys have a lot more speed going into these straightaways. It's going to be very hard to try and keep up with those guys. So Jonathan, what's
Oh my goodness.
He's going to keep it together and keep it clean. That was a very, very close one. Very, very close.
For the moment, but that same feeling that I got from earlier stands tall. So again, just showing his talent, his ability to put the car where he needs it. Great moves by John Delaney. One thing I did want to note, however, this is just of the two cars of Patrick Muge and I think Cody Porter looks to have gotten into one another. So Cody Porter no longer in this race. It's sad to see, but I think we might get some action post-race down in the pit lane. May turn into a Harvick Elliott situation, shall we?
Absolutely. We actually have a driver in the infield care center, the number 16 of Ryan Samuelson. Let's get him in the booth real quick and have a word with him and see what happened to his race today. Ryan, sir, can you read me?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Ryan, how are you feeling right now? You were looking pretty good out there for a while, and we saw you kind of drop into pit road and just never come out again. What happened for you there today?
I got wall at 25 and just frustrated and disappointed from that. So once that happened, my race was basically over. Just hoping for attrition a little bit right now.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
Ryan.
It's a little tough sometimes with these super speedways, especially with how tight of pack racing can get, and I know this isn't necessarily the result you're wanting currently, but how tough is it necessarily to get up to that front pack, stay where you want to be, and is it going to be any good results in terms of the points for you?
Pack-wise, it's very tough because you're trying to get all these cars organized and trying to get everyone has different levels of tape, and you're just struggling to try to get the right set of cars in the right positions, and that's where the pack I was with in the beginning of the race, that's where we really struggled. We had so many guys that had a lot of tape on, so they were peeking out and constantly peeking out and out of line, that it just slowed us down so much. We were losing a second. It felt like a second a lap, and then we got too far back, and then checkup happened, and I didn't even make it to the green flag pit stops before I had damage, and my race was effectively killed.
Well, Ryan.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Points-wise, it's basically win only next week, and that's it. I mean, as long as Delaney or Miller shows up, we're not getting that win.
Well, Ryan, it's unfortunate to see that happen for you here today, and hopefully you'll be able to recoup some of that next week going into next week's race.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Ryan, bummer for you here today, man, but look forward to seeing you next week, and just keep your head up high, and hopefully we'll see you up in the front of the field again next week.
Hopefully. Can I say one thing? Thoughts are with RJ's family. Betty Green is the race that named after him. He lost his grandfather this week. Thoughts and our prayers are out with RJ and their family as they heal this time.
Our hearts go out to them as well as they heal in these troubling times. Ryan, thank you for coming into the booth today and having a chat with us. Good luck to you, Ryan, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, that was Ryan Samuelson in this number 16 machine. Bit of a bummer, a little bit of a tragedy for his race here today, but like we said earlier, that's all it takes to have your race be kind of thrown out the window completely in these series. These are very long and brutal, demanding races, so the tiniest little thing can can really ruin your entire race, and that's kind of the case that happened here for Ryan today. But hopefully next week he's able to recoup some of that and maybe lead some laps next week and have a little bit of a better race. But Drew, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm hoping he's going to be able to bounce back. It's always tough when a result like this happens, especially when it's a race you probably were looking forward to either improving or doing well in. But it's really, with these drivers and how long these races are, it's really just all about the bounce back. You know, it's these races go on every week, and these guys have to prepare for such long stints, right? So it's really tough for them at times, but it's all about the preparation and the bounce back from something that's happened that necessarily didn't go your way. So, you know, he's probably going to be doing very well, and like he said in the pre-interviews, at times he's desperate to make a move for stage points. So you can't do that just sitting behind and sitting in the back. He took a chance. He took a chance to try and get up there and get some much-needed stage points for himself and his team, but unfortunately wasn't able to pull out anything for stage points for his team today. We'll just have to see how he does next week when it comes to the Charlotte Roval, Mason.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting race for next week. But as we enter lap 104 here, we're going to take a quick little break here in the booth and let you guys kind of enjoy the sights and sounds of Talladega and let you take a ride on board with Jonathan Delaney here. And we'll see you all back here in a couple minutes. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the action. That was Jonathan Delaney in the number 9 machine that you were watching there. Take some laps around the track. Wow, what a race it's been so far. We're on lap 108 of 188. 80 laps left to go here at Talladega, and it's been quite the race here today. We've seen significant changes in the field as far as who's been leading this race. Cameron Stone is currently leading the race in that number 57 machine. Jason S. Taylor on his tail, as well as Sean O'Brien Jr. Wow. I can't say it enough that we've just seen a lot of different changes in who's been leading this field, who's trying to really make a statement here today. Jonathan Delaney for a while was looking to be the driver to beat here today, but that seemed to have changed here today. It's honestly, I can't even really make a guess as to who's going to be in the top 5 towards stage 3 here, as we're actually getting closer and closer to that stage 3 point.
Yeah, as we come down to almost 10 laps to go at this point, as we hit a lap 110 crossing line. Wow, it's almost like time flew, Mason, a little bit. It really has gone by in just the snap of a finger. But you know, as good as John Delaney has been just this entire season, as well as this race to this point, my guess is as good as yours in terms of the top 5, the top 10 even, for all of these guys, as the top 10 currently sits, you know, within a second and a half of each other. Those guys falling back in the P11 through P14 spots, they're a little bit far away from each other and the front of the pack. We'll see how they end up in the final stages of this race, but you know, that number the number 12 car, sorry, or not 12, sorry, 3 car. Again, my number's mixed up already. The number 3 car of Brian Mabry is currently a good candidate for that lucky dog if he does fall down. But Damiris Hickenbottom currently holds that. So we'll see how these stage caution pit stops rack up. Good driving from all of the top 5, even the top 10 to this point, however, with Jonathan Delaney sitting P5, might look to have a great start in terms of the final stage here, Mason.
Yeah, so, and you know, that's going to be the interesting thing here as we start to get closer to wrapping up here our second stage. You know, I said it at the beginning of this stage. This is going to be the stage where it's going to be absolutely vital to position yourself in the best spot possible, because once we start stage 3, given the performance that we've seen here today from these drivers, it's been green and clean for 112 laps. I don't think that there's really going to be many opportunities for drivers to kind of get a chance at a restart in stage 3. Some drivers are usually kind of hoping for that chance, you know, be able to get the field kind of re-racked and get things going again, give themselves another opportunity to be able to get into a pack and get into a groove, and maybe gain some positions. But with just how consistent this race has been, I think currently for everyone at least in the top 10, it's man, they're going to have an interesting restart here for stage 3, as it's going to be, I think, the last time that they're going to have an opportunity to really make any significant gains as far as where they are in position.
Yeah, you are not incorrect in that statement whatsoever. It's the final stage, and how it starts is really going to come down to how they deal with it, specifically for their pit stops as well. We already know that caution is going to fly for the stage, so hopefully, and I say this in the dearest of terms, hopefully speeding in the pits is not an issue for anyone going down those pit lanes. But sometimes these guys can get eager to try and even gain some kind of spots where they can get it, so they might get a little eager down pit lane to speed and get a penalty, unfortunately. But we'll have to see if everyone can hit their marks, be able to just fall in line where they need to. It's really going to depend on how they treat it. And I don't think, in the slightest of terms, John Delaney is going to want to sit behind too far longer.
No, I definitely got to agree with you there, Drew. I think Jonathan Delaney is definitely getting a little fed up with being in 5th position currently. He's been there for a little bit now, and I think it's kind of, I want to say it's worked for him a little bit as far as kind of saving tires, saving fuel, but even with that in mind, that's not enough to make your race really that effective. You know, and not to discredit Jonathan Delaney, he's in 5th right now, so that's nothing to discredit him for. It's a good position to be in. But as we get closer to these restarts, to this Stage 3 restart, I think Jonathan Delaney's definitely going to want to find himself leading the field, or even being behind the lead driver at the very least. Jonathan Delaney was leading this race pretty much the entirety of Stage 1, and unfortunately found himself a little bit farther back than he'd like to be, down 4 positions currently, and really hasn't lost too many positions so far going forward into this race, but he's definitely had quite the job to try and regain any of that, if at all.
Yeah.
And you're seeing on your screen currently, you have a little bit of lap traffic kind of in front of him, all around him really. So there's cars between the lead drivers. So it's a little confusing, a little weird, seeing all these guys kind of racing together, even though they're not all on the lead lap. So that kind of doesn't really play in Jonathan Delaney's favor. But 4 laps left to go here before we wrap up Stage 2. So hopefully we'll get to see that change for Jonathan and have him get a good restart here in Stage 3. Really love to see him lead some more laps here.
I think he's pretty happy leading some laps as well. I think he'll probably agree with you on all fronts in terms of that, Mason. But it's been a great show so far from Cameron Stone, leading for a majority of the second stage here. Jason Taylor battling with him in some good spots, but Sean O'Brien Jr. also just sitting back, watching, waiting for his chance. And, all 3 of those drivers currently in the mix for the championship. But, Mike Floppy, who's just happy to be where he is currently in that P4 spot, separates the top 3 from John Delaney. And I mean, all these other guys in the back as well. Don Mobley, Dustin Hall making his way back up to P8 at this point. That's a very impressive remark for him. And Adam Benefield currently sitting in P10, making up 16 spots from when he originally started this race. These guys are very happy in the position they're in right now, and I'd have to imagine, like you were saying earlier, these guys are more than happy to sit back and relax up until this final stage commences, Mason.
Yeah, Drew, it's, this is a long race. We've said that plenty of times already this entire broadcast, so making sure that you yourself as a driver is as comfortable as you can be. You're going to be in that seat for at least 3 hours for these races. Now, surprisingly, we've been live for about 2 hours now, and we're just about 3/4 of the race through this race here today. Now, that's impressive for these guys being going green this long. Absolutely impressive. Now, it's like I said, when you're in that seat for that long, it can get a little taxing on the brain, having to stay focused for that long. It takes an immense amount of focus to be able to stay in these races and stay competitive. Now, it's easy enough to just hop in the seat and just drive around the track for 3 hours, but it's another thing to be first in a 28 car field and go around 500 miles at Talladega. That's a completely different story. So the mentality of all these guys currently is it's absolutely impressive. All these guys, just impressive racing through and through. And it's, I got to give credit to them, Drew. These guys are great. Excellent racing.
Absolutely. And, some of people out there might think that it's just, it's a little bit easier to go green flag racing when it comes to super speedways or even, larger speedways such as like the Charlotte or anything like that. But it's really not that easy to go green this long. These guys have been respectful in all sorts of the word. These guys have done some fantastic racing in terms of battling for position any chance that they have. And as we come across the start-finish line, we're going to see the caution. But not before Jason Taylor gets the stage win, I think, but he goes sideways, gets quarter-paneled into the wall, is the number 37. That is detrimental to his repair time, I would have to say. He's going to be falling very much to maybe even the back of the line.
Yeah, definitely not what you want to see for Jason S. Taylor here, as he's going to drop back a few more positions as we see drivers make his way around him. But, you know, as funny as it might seem, that almost couldn't have come at a more perfect time for Jason S. Taylor. I don't think the timing of that incident could have been more perfect. It kind of saved him from losing any more positions than he could have in this situation. To see him drop down as many positions as he just did, he's now going to be down 5 in P11. Oh, man. You know, it's one of those things where it's like,
rough.
it's rough. It is very rough. It's like, okay.
It really is.
It's like, well, you know, I didn't lose too many positions, but I'm still down 5 positions from where I was. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there for Jason S. Taylor in that number 37 machine.
Yeah, I'd have to fully agree with you there, and I don't think anyone really wanted that incident to happen at the very last part of the stage either. But Jason Taylor, hopefully his pit crew can do as much as they can to try and get him back up and running as much as he can. But as you're seeing him go down the back straight, though, he's almost wobbling side by side trying to keep that car under control. So as much as it pains me to say, I would have to imagine he's in for a long pit repair time, Mason.
Yeah, and you know, that's kind of the unfortunate part too about getting involved in incidents like that. And you know, you might not think that your car is as damaged as you think it is, but then you start to really put the pressure on it, and you start to feel the tiny little things that are wrong with it. Your steering isn't quite the same. You're not able to keep the same line. It's doing all sorts of weird janky things that you're not used to, and it's definitely not ideal when you're going into pit road and having to fix that. It's gonna impede on your time, and I think I gotta agree with you there, Drew. It's not gonna be good for him today.
Jason Taylor's listening to the broadcast. I think he might put not ideal as a very, very big understatement, probably in that sense. But you know, it's devastating to say the least when a driver that's been so clean and very competitive for this race gets into a scuffle like that. He did his best to try and keep it off the wall, but ended up slapping that front splitter on the wall, on the inside wall there. So we'll see how his pit crew can repair it. Currently sitting in his pit stall for over 70 seconds at this moment in time. So hopefully he'll be able to get out there very shortly. But I did want to reiterate as well from what we heard from Samuelson when he came back from the infield care center, that there was a driver, the number 8 of RJ Root, who currently lost a family member in recent times and is unable to make it for at least a few races. So every thought and everything we can give to RJ, I hope he does well. Wishing him and his family as best as they can in this difficult time. And you know, on behalf of everyone in the booth and everyone in my community, we wish you the best and to hopefully get better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not easy losing a family member. Definitely going to be giving all of my thoughts and prayers to everyone in that family as they work their way through this difficult time. And hopefully all of these drivers here today have them in their thoughts as we take 500 laps around Talladega. It's going to be, it's going to be an interesting stage 3, I think, here today.
It will be, yeah.
You know, we've seen a lot of things shake up here throughout the field. We've seen a lot of change-ups in who's been leading, who's kind of been in the top 3, the top 5 even. We've seen drivers that we haven't seen kind of almost every single stage. It seems like we have a little bit of a exchange of drivers, if you will, coming from various parts of the field into the front and getting some of that action and the leading the front of the field here. But lights are off on the pace car. We're going to get ready to rock and roll here for Stage 3. It's going to be the final stint that these guys have to make around this track. We're going to only have one more, I believe, pit window that we're going to have to make here before the end of the race. So, man, who is going to be the driver to watch here, you think, Drew?
Oh man, I can't put it down to one person, you know? It's very hard.
It's hard.
Very hard to tell because anything can happen in these final few laps. And as you said, it's going to be a very short pit window for this final stage and towards the end of the race, you know, with only somewhere around 43, 44 laps to go. That pit window might be open a little bit earlier, maybe 20, 25 laps in for some of these guys. They might want to just bank on that instead of banking for cautions. However, it's going to get dicey in these last 40 or so laps. So be on the lookout, be vigilant. These guys have to keep their eyes open if they're going to make it towards the end of the race. And when you get a little bit dicey, just make smart moves. We've seen these guys in the front just be able to sit back, relax, and be able to find when they want to make their move when the time is right. Jonathan Delaney, currently sitting in P9 right now, is going to have a lot to make up. So these guys have to be careful when it comes to the aggression.
Absolutely. You are right there, Drew, as we see pace car head into pit road here. These drivers are going to get ready for the green flag drop here as they make their way around turn 3 and 4, coming out of turn 4 now. They're going to wait for that green flag to drop here, and it does. Sean O'Brien Jr. is going to try and get a launch, but he's not able to get as much of a launch as he'd probably like. As Mike Floppy's going to be on his door with Dalton Mobley and Tanner Knoll kind of in the mix here. We have a field of drivers going 2 wide here around turn 1 and 2.
3 wide.
Yeah, it's quite impressive to see all these guys here coming right off the rip here, but Sean O'Brien Jr. able to hold on to that first position with Dalton Mobley in second, currently in that 77 machine. Dalton is a driver we haven't talked about too much yet here today, but another driver that we have, Dustin Hall, currently third in that number 1. He's made his way back into the front of the field. We were right on that call there, Drew.
Unbelievable movement from Dustin Hall, I'd have to say. It's up into P3 on this restart now. I believe he started in P5 somewhere in there, so made some great moves to try and get up there. And look at the top 3 as well. Sean O'Brien Jr., Dalton Mobley, and Dustin Hall currently attempting to pull away from everyone in the back of them. But Bryson Hicksonbaugh, if he has anything to say about it, he is saying, come here, because he does not want to get anywhere too far from these guys. But great job on everyone currently going single file, but over the next course of somewhere around 40 laps, 42 laps at this point, you're going to see all these cars trying to kick out and try and overtake as much as they possibly can. Some of these guys have the ability to do it, but some of these guys are going to need some help. It's going to be interesting to see who falls where in these final stages.
Yeah, you know, and it's like you said, it's really going to be interesting to see who's going to put themselves where, because like we've said already, we've seen a lot of different kind of switch-ups here in the field. But another interesting point that I'd like to make is the fact that these guys have gone this long in this race, 127 laps, all green. You know, we really haven't seen too much, I guess you would say, kind of overtaking aggression that you would see in these in this front pack here. And I think the reason for that is, well, everyone's kind of trying to follow behind one another and conserve fuel, conserve tires, and not be too aggressive too early on. So I guess what I'm wondering here is, are we going to start to see kind of this front field here start to maybe even start to go 2 wide, 3 wide towards the end of this round, or of this stage?
I don't think it's out of the question at all, Mason. These guys are going to get a little bit anxious in terms of their finishing position. Maybe some of those guys are trying to get a one-up on those stage points, especially with the round of 8 coming just around the corner after next week, you know. So these guys have a lot of moves to make, especially in this latter half of the race. 40 laps to go. There's going to be one more stop, I would have to imagine, for all drivers. You can't, there's just not enough fuel saving that one could do unless there's a caution to be able to make it to the end of the race. So I'm expecting all of these drivers to be hitting one more time towards the end of this race, but some of these guys might wait up until their gas tank is entirely out. We don't know what's going to happen, and that's exactly what I'm looking forward to seeing, because it's exciting just to see what these guys have in store in terms of their strategy. And I think it's really gonna be, a make or break for some of these guys, and some of these guys just might pull out an astonishing finish.
Yeah, and like we were saying, it's kind of hard to put a finger on who is going to be the one to really make a statement here and take a first place finish. Just because we've seen so many different drivers exchanging positions, we've seen so many different strategies that have all kind of worked out pretty well for a lot of these drivers here, and some of them have been working out, I would say, later in the race than we saw kind of earlier on. And I think that just kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, that a lot of these drivers are going to be playing kind of the long haul strategy, if you will,
Yeah.
where they're going to take things easy at the beginning of the race. They're going to get comfortable kind of mid-pack, maybe even the back of the field if they're feeling really ballsy, or, maybe they want to... maybe they just want to have a really good race this time around. You never know. All these guys have different things in mind for these races, so you never really can guess what they're thinking, but... Yeah, I think a lot of these guys that we're seeing in the front of the field now, they were playing that kind of save the car strategy early on in the race, and we're seeing them push those cars now in this final stage.
Yeah, one of the guys actually as well that's currently in the mix for the championship, but currently sitting on that cut line as well. He's currently 9th in the points. Is Kevin Steele. And when there were pre-race questions asked of all of these guys, he was asked, how is the aero package necessarily for these ovals? Because it's a different one for every track you go to, But the super speedway package, it doesn't hinder these cars at all. It in fact helps a ton, especially in the draft. But Kevin Steele only had one word to say, and that was scoreboard. And his team has been amazing. That's all I can really say in terms of the Apex Racing team. They've been great in terms of their points. They are currently sitting, I believe, 2nd in the points next to Dangerous Goods Racing, John Delaney in that team, the DGR team. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys can finish out. Kevin Steele currently a lap down, but that's not to put him out of the race just yet.
Yeah, no, there's still plenty of time left to go here in this race to make something happen. Lap 133 of 188. This track kind of gives a lot of opportunities to, if you're finding yourself in not your ideal position that you'd like to be in, well, given the amount of room that you have on this track, the straightaways that you have, it's very plausible, very easy for some of these drivers to be able to kind of push these cars a little bit towards the end of their stints and be able to regain some of these, well, not regain, but kind of gain some positions here towards the closing end of this stage. But all of these drivers are kind of doing the same exact thing. So really what we're kind of looking for right now is who seems to be the one that is playing things a little bit smarter. You know, a lot of these guys that we're seeing out in the front of the field currently, Jonathan Delaney, who we're looking at now, if we're basing things based off of pit lap time, or the last pit lap, kind of how long they've been in there, Jonathan Delaney, his pit time last lap around was 36 seconds. He actually had a little bit of a worse pit entry than everyone else did. So for a driver like Jonathan, who didn't have an optimal pit time, you know, you can expect to probably have some damage on that car still if he wasn't able to get it all fixed in that one. But my point being, if you're not able to get these pit strategies correct in this part of the race, it's going to be hard to make that up unless you're really confident in your ability to push through the field. But as we've seen here today, it's hard. It's going to be a hard thing to do for any of these guys. A lot of these guys are really fast, but man, oh man, this entire field is just something to witness.
That's the thing, is you can't just put it on one person, right? You can't just say, oh yeah, this guy is just going to come out and do the very best. There's going to be times where someone's caught up. John Delaney clearly getting probably caught up in whatever incident happened in that last stage end. So he's had some damages he's had to repair. Took a little bit of a longer pit stop. Started all the way back in P9, P10, somewhere back there when it came to the restarts off of that stage in the beginning of the final few laps. But currently sits in P6 at this very moment. He's just sitting back, maybe, you know, getting all the power that he can out of that car at this very moment. So he's just looking to try and maybe finish strong as much as he can. But when you've got people who have run very clean races, and that of Sean O'Brien Jr. and Dalton Mobley, those two currently up there. Dustin Hall also has run a very clean race as far as I know. So when you've got those three that are going to be very, very competitive towards the end of these laps, I think John Delaney's just happy with any kind of points he can put on the table.
Yeah, Jonathan right now, you know, I was saying earlier, I was kind of hoping to see him work his way through the front of the field again on that restart for stage 3, but doesn't look like he was able to make that work out in his favor. And we've said it already, all of these guys here are just extremely fast here today. You can see here on our screen all the drivers with red banners in their windows, as well as the red bumpers there. Those are all playoff drivers, so all of these guys are going to be competing for points, and I don't think any one of these drivers is going to be wanting to give up any positions or even be comfortable where they're at. I think a lot of these guys are going to want to push as hard as they possibly can, especially if you're in that bubble. And I think the only person in that bubble right now is Dustin Hall in that number 1 machine. So Dustin's going to be having probably a good race today, finishing P3. It's going to give him quite a few points, but everyone in the top 10 currently, it's going to be a battle. These final, I think 50 or so laps, it's going to be a duke out, and the closer and closer we get towards wrapping this race up, it's only going to get more and more intense, I think. It's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully we'll see Jonathan Delaney make something happen, but Cameron Stone, also another driver that we saw leading the field. It's a few other drivers as well were able to lead the field and be competitive here. So just a handful of drivers here that we're looking out for and paying attention to, and there's just a lot happening, and we're getting a little bit closer to our next expected pit cycle. So that'll be another interesting thing to see here as we get closer and closer to that. But still, everything is green and clean racing here. Everyone going single file here. Sean O'Brien Jr. still leading the field here. Drew, man, this has just been an excellent race, man.
It really has. And again, props to all these drivers currently that have just been able to keep their noses clean, be able to respect everyone in terms of their races. And it's been exciting overall just to see how these guys have adjusted to all the adversity that they've had to go through in this race. You know, uh, whether it's them sitting behind, adjusting to the draft in terms of the corners, the lapped cars that end up in front of their faces at the last second, they have to adjust very quickly. You know, these guys have really done well in terms of just rebounding and trying to get back up there, especially, like we said, Dustin Hall making up all those places after getting stuck in the back early on in that first stage. So great stuff coming from these guys overall, and I think a lot of these guys that were pretty confident in their super speedway ability have really shown in terms of how they're able to just shine on this top stage here, Mason.
Yeah, it's it's really impressive to see. It's almost interesting too. These super speedways kind of change how a lot of these drivers performs, because a lot of these guys are kind of used to the more traditional oval setups where you have room to go fast and get around each other, and coming to a super speedway where everything is just fast, pedal to the metal, I think it kind of throws some of these guys off, because it's you don't have a lot of room. There's no real opportunity to let off the throttle a little bit, kind of find your groove going into a line, going into turns. It's just keep that throttle down and keep your car moving forward, because if you let off that throttle even just a little bit, that guy behind you is going to catch up quicker than you can blink. So it's very interesting to see these talented drivers just ripping it around the track. 142 laps. I believe that's just over, I think, 350 miles, or closer to 400 probably at this point. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Drew,
only 100 more to go.
Yeah.
No.
It's
in the final stretch of this, Mason.
Yeah, it's just been a great race here. 143 laps of just green clean racing from all of these guys that we're seeing here today. And I don't think either one of us were expecting to see the field switch up as much as it has. Personally, I kind of was expecting to kind of see things switch up a little bit here and there. Honestly, I was expecting to see a lot more. I don't want to say it. I don't want to give commentators curse, but it's really great to see that these guys have been able to push this race out as long as they've been able to. It's absolutely impressive, and like we've been saying this entire race, the gaps between the front of the field, between all these drivers, it's stayed fairly consistent this entire time. Drew, you said it a few times already. These guys have been extremely respectful to one another, not getting too close to one another to where you kind of feel like you're about to get into the bumper or to the side panel of someone and send them into the wall. We've seen that happen a couple times, but for the couple slip-ups that we have seen, I think it's easily forgiven. It's a bit of a bummer for the drivers that are involved and having to be booted out of the race or being sent back into the field. But overall, I think this race has turned out very strangely, I'll say.
Strangely is a word. Yeah, I would definitely use that in the mix of feelings. I think that a lot of people are probably feeling in terms of this race today. So, but you're definitely right in terms of all the drivers that have currently experienced something that just didn't necessarily go their way, right? We heard it with Ryan Samuelson earlier when we pulled him in and got him on the microphone. He was a little bit distraught, I'd have to say, to be where he was in the conditions he had to endure, to be out of the race and no longer in contention for any more points. But it didn't seem like he was overly upset. It seemed like it was something he understood, because all of these guys know that it's a part of racing. It's a culture of racing where sometimes things just don't go your way, and the way that you handle that, the way that you bounce back from that is really going to show exactly what you're capable of. So I don't doubt that, you know, all these guys that we've seen so far that haven't been able to finish today, they're going to come back even harder and stronger for the next race at the Charlotte Roval, which, might I add, that's going to be a very, very technical and difficult track for these guys, especially with the Cup cars. It's never easy to do any sort of road course in a stock car, much less these Cup cars that don't necessarily like it when you put right turns into the mix there, Mason.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Drew. These cars can get very interesting on the road courses. Personally, I've yet to see a Cup race at a road course, so that'll be an interesting one to watch and commentate for. I love road courses. They're always great fun. And for these guys, you know, to kind of come out of their element a little bit, come off the oval and come onto a road course, it's going to be excellent to watch. It's going to be exciting to see who is going to be a top performer in that race. It's going to be exciting, I think. There's a lot of talent in this field, and there's a few drivers that I think will do very well. Jonathan Delaney, obviously one of them that I think will do very well. Adam Benefield, Bryson Hicksonbaugh, Sean O'Brien Jr. I think is another driver that I think will do very well in a setting like that. But there's a few other here that I think will also be very strong contenders who I've never seen race on a road course before, let alone in a Cup car. So it's going to be interesting to see. You know, for these drivers to step out of their element and come on to something a little bit different that they're not used to. It's those challenges, I think, are what really make a driver shine. Being able to overcome those challenges and come out on top, it's always a great feeling, and it's always a great thing to see, especially if it's not something that's exactly your forte or you're not comfortable with. To be able to tackle that head on and come out on top, it's always great to see. So I'm excited to see who's going to be the one to do that next week.
I would have to agree with you fully there, Mason. But it can be difficult, as you were saying too. Like some of these guys, it might not be their forte, but you know, coming from a road background myself, I've always driven those road courses and always started out on the road courses. But even when you do know the road courses by heart, by motion, by muscle memory, it's always different when you're in a different car. And I'd have to imagine that it's like significantly more difficult in a stock car in general, where it can be unsettling if you don't have any sort of a good draft, and also with some banking as well. These tires, these packages, these cars in general are meant for the oval banking type. So it can get difficult in a lot of senses, and I know they have different aero packages, they have different setups for the road, but these cars definitely don't like when they have to endure everything by themselves, and especially chicanes. We've seen how these cars can get ripped up with chicanes. Hopefully that won't happen next week, but the Roval is definitely going to be one of those tracks that I think is going to shine in terms of these cars specifically. I think these guys are going to enjoy it to the fullest, and I think we're probably going to be surprised by some of these guys that end up being towards the top as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Drew. That's, you know, it's I'm kind of curious to see who is going to be the strong competitors for next week. You know, having watched these guys go through on oval courses, excuse me. You know, and like you said, these cars are not very kind to right-hand turns. They're I would say they don't like being thrown into turns too quickly. It's not that they're able to make right turns. It's just that the way that these cars are designed, the way that they're set up, their aero, their downforce is not exactly set up to be sort of dynamic in the sense that it's able to handle different different sort of turns, chicanes, um, a lot of different courses you see, you're having to go into turns at different speeds. And I from the races that I have seen with NASCAR on road courses, these cars, they have to slow down quite a bit more going into things like chicanes, going into sharp right-handers. They struggle quite a bit, and it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be able to tame these beasts on that road course.
And the biggest thing too isn't that it's necessarily just the the way that the cars are, or like the packages themselves. It's not individually just the tires. It's not individually just the brakes. It's not anything like that. The cars in general are just extremely heavy compared to anything you would build on a road. The Formula One cars, if I recall correctly, are probably somewhere near a third, I would think, of what a stock car holds in terms of weight. So stock cars in general are very, very heavy, and that's what causes a lot of what we see, not only in the real world but also in the sim world, of these stock cars just spinning out on road courses and their inability to just be very good on those tracks. So it's it will be interesting, and I think that's just the lightest term that we can use in terms of expecting a great race for next week.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for these drivers going into next week is going to be precision. And as I say that, actually, we're going to have drivers entering into pit road here, a handful of drivers
that's
here.
A lot.
Oh, we got a driver going sideways as well.
He is sideways into the grass. That is probably not the way to enter pit lane, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, not the best way to enter into pit lane, but hey, you come in with fashion. Got to give credit to the number 3 machine.
He's just
Brian
trying to
Mabry.
stick out.
Just trying to get some of that TV time. You gotta make
exactly.
it count. But
good note though. John Delaney up in that front spot, currently sitting. He's about to pop out, but look at that number 63 car of Bryson Hixenbaugh. Cameron Stone, the number 57 as well, getting out very well. So Sean O'Brien Jr., Dalton Mobley, and Randy Drumhiller also all coming into the pits, as we're about to see them attempt to get as quick of a pit stop as their competitors just did. Preston McRae, though, one of the drivers that is currently in that bubble for the championship into it next week, hasn't pit yet. He currently sits in 12th place, but we'll see where he ends up once he does pit. Good pit stops from Bryson and Cameron, though, of the 63 and 57.
yeah, absolutely. Bryson and Cameron duking it out currently for the 4th position, but as they get closer and closer to the top 3 drivers who are now coming out of pit road and coming back out onto the track just in the nick of time, it seems, as well. But
oh boy,
are they going to have enough time? No, they are not. They're not going to be able to keep those positions that they're holding on to, as Bryson Hixenbaugh and Cameron Stone are now going to be leading the field in 1st and 2nd. It actually looks like Bryson's having a little bit, Bryson Hixenbaugh having a little bit of internet issues, having a little bit of blip happening here and there, so Cameron Stone's going to have to be looking out for that.
He's been in and out, I think, most of the race at this point, yeah. But currently leading the entire pack of that front pack is the number 63, Bryson Hixenbaugh. He's going to be very happy with that and hopefully be able to hold on. But this is where it starts to get dicey, because everyone is now on their final stint. We've got a little over 30 laps to go. That's going to take everyone to their final little bits of fuel and tire wear. So I don't expect anyone to pit unless there's a caution, and even then I don't think I would expect anyone to pit after that when that happens. So we'll have to see how everything turns out, but I would not doubt, Mason, that it's going to start getting a little hectic towards the end of this race here in the next 10 laps.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here as we get closer and closer to the final few laps of this stage. Things are going to get very interesting for the guys in the top 4 positions. Currently, Bryson Hicksonbaugh, Cameron Stone, Jonathan Delaney, and Dustin Hall. Now, Jonathan Delaney and Dustin Hall were both drivers who have been leading this field for quite some time now, so it's good to see Jonathan Delaney back in 3rd. He's going to be trying to put some pressure on Cameron Stone and as well as Bryson Hicksonbaugh to try and make a pass, but it looks like Cameron Stone actually is getting a little eager there, putting a little pressure on that number 63 machine, trying to get him to slip up or make some sort of mistake or something to try and get around. But Cameron Stone keeping it clean, not getting too close to that 63. Oh, man, we got a tight field here up in the front. All 4 drivers doing a very solid job of staying in a single line here, but you can kind of see Dustin Hall starting to fall off there just a little bit. He's going to be the man kind of at the tail end of this line here, so he's going to be having to work that car a little bit more than everyone else. So he's going to be falling back just a little bit, and the only driver behind him is Sean O'Brien Jr., who's currently 5th. And there's about a 3-second gap between 5th and 4th currently, so Dustin Hall's gonna hopefully he'll be able to hold on to that position that he's got right now. But right now everything is looking good for him so far. But we're getting closer and closer to the final end of this stage here. Things are looking very interesting. Are these top 4 drivers really going to be able to hold on to what they got, or are we going to see a switch up here in the front of the field before the end of this race?
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. I think with Cameron Stone, I think he was eager to push Bryson Hicksonbaugh very early on, mainly because he might recognize the potential that second pack that Sean O'Brien Jr. is currently leading, that they have the ability to catch up, and it could be a almost full 10-car race in that aspect. But we'll have to see, because these guys are falling off just a tad bit. Sean O'Brien Jr. doing a good job at pacing these guys. It's just all about the guys that are behind him, especially that of Dalton Mobley in that 77 car. He's really got to be able to put his nose on that back bumper, be able to push as much as he can if they want to make any sort of impact on this 3.5-second gap. Dustin Hall, though, still sitting probably 2/10 behind John Delaney, and I don't think he's going to fall too far as of right now, but he's really got to be careful. Any kind of mistake that he makes could put him towards behind that 24 car that trails them and into that second pack.
Yeah, Dustin Hall is definitely, he's probably going to be feeling a little concerned at this point, because like you said, if he falls off of that pace that he's got right now, even just a little bit, the pack that Sean O'Brien Jr. is currently leading, they're going to catch up to Dustin Hall, and they're going to get around him very easily, very quickly. So Dustin Hall is going to have to find himself a nice little groove here, and maybe even hopefully get a little bit of support from that number 24 machine of Kevin Steele. But Kevin Steele is a lap driver, so he's not really going to be. I don't think Kevin's going to really be offering too much assistance to Dustin Hall here in the rest of this race.
I don't think so either, and he is a candidate for a lucky dog. So, with that being said, if there does happen to be a caution, Kevin Steele would be the first person to get his lap back and be able to get in contention for anywhere in those essential spots for points. But we'll have to see how it turns out. Dustin Hall not wanting to fall too far behind, and this pack is gaining time over that second pack. So, Dalton Mobley not necessarily now leading the pack. Sean O'Brien Jr. falls to the 8th place spot, and I think that's where the time difference now stands when it comes to these drivers. We'll see if Dalton Mobley can make up some time and maybe get some pushing going on from Tanner Noel, who's also, I believe, in the points, if I recall. But we've got an exciting race on our hands, Mason, with just over 20 laps to go. These guys have a lot of ground to make up. It's very, very capable of these guys to try and get up there as well. It's just a matter of, how long how fast can they do it? How long will they take? And who's going to be able to get that top spot?
Yeah, 25 laps to go. I mean, I would like to say that they do have enough time, but I almost think that it's just barely enough time. 25 laps is a long time to go, but it's a 2.5 mile track. We have quite the gap between the current pack that Tanner Knowles is currently leading to the front of the field. So the 3-second gap that they currently have between those two packs, it should be easy to close given the kind of the pack that Tanner has behind him. But the guys up in the front of the field are also doing the same thing and doing an excellent job of it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But it looks like Bryson Hicksonball still having some issues there. Cameron Stone, I think, just being a little cautious, not wanting to have that 63 just appear in his hood. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what these guys are going to be able to pull off here. I think if Tanner Knoll is able to kind of keep that pace going with that pack that he's got currently, they'll be able to catch up to the front of the field, but it's going to be probably at the very tail end of this race here. It's probably going to be with maybe 15 left to go, maybe 10, but only time will tell. We'll see what these guys are able to do here. It's looking to be anyone's race at this point.
It very well could be, and I think Bryson Hicksonball now falling down to 4th place. I would have to imagine that may have been a result of his connectivity issues, but Cameron Stone being very aware, which is very good in his perspective, because he was not pushing it too far, pushing it to where he's now inside of the 63 car, or even worse, crashing them both. So great awareness from that 57 machine in that of Cameron Stone. And on his back bumper is the guy of the hour, John Delaney, who is still up with these guys. These two have led the most laps out of all of those 2 stages that we've gone through.
There's really nothing you can do in Bryson's position, so he's kind of just had to make it work and make the best of it. So hopefully Bryson is able to maintain his current pace and able to stick it out in 4th, or maybe even kind of work his way back up through the front of the pack here. But he's starting to get a little bit of a gap between himself and the top 3. Not too much though. So, but man, oh man, Jonathan Delaney in 2nd place again. Man, he's been trying to work his way up through the field this entire time, ever since stage 2, and the fact to see him back out here out in the front of the field once again, it's impressive. Got to give credit to Jonathan Delaney for holding out and sticking out as long as he has, being as consistent as he has this entire race. Very impressive to see that from Jonathan Delaney, but now he's going to have to really push that car as hard as he can, because he's got Cameron Stone in front of him, and Cameron's not looking like he wants to let that 9 around him anytime soon. I think Cameron's looking to get a P1 finish tonight.
I don't doubt it in the slightest. He's going to hold that bottom line for as long as he can, and hold it as tight as he can in those corners to keep it down to that yellow line in those turns, so that there is just no way John Delaney can put a nose on his inside. The outside line is not necessarily ideal for taking, but we'll have to see how it goes. With now 20 laps to go, less than 20 laps as we cross the finish line, start-finish line. The second pack currently led by Dalton Mobley, now down to 3 seconds almost. It's very possible still for them to get up there, but they've really got to turn on the jets now if they have any chance of getting to these top 4 guys. These top 4 guys also, some of the guys that we've seen in the top of the standings. John Delaney leading everyone, of course, with Bryson Hicksonball in 2nd place, Cameron Stone in 3rd. This could be very big if Cameron Stone gets a win here. Bryson Hicksonball able to also stick up in terms of the top spots with them as well. But that second back has a lot of guys that are currently on the bubble, so these guys really have to make some kind of move if they want to make sure that they secure their spot for the round of 8.
Yeah, you know, if you're Kevin Steele, if you're Damaris Hickenbottom, or even Preston McRae, yeah, you're definitely going to be wanting to push that car as hard as you possibly can with when you're on the bubble like this. But given we only have 18 laps left to go, it's going to be very hard.
It's difficult. It's difficult.
It's almost nearly impossible, especially with how consistent this race has been. Oh man, it's very difficult to try and work your way through these fields and be able to gain a position where you can, but what can you do when there's only 18 laps left to go and you're not having the best race that you possibly want? That's what kind of makes racing so interesting. You know, when you have these super long races, I hate to say it, but your race could be done halfway through the race, and you know you just have to finish it. It's very unfortunate for a lot of these guys, but when these things happen and you're finding yourself kind of just down in the middle or the back of the field, not able to gain any positions, your race can kind of be foretold before it even ends.
Yeah, and it really, like we said before at the very start of the show, it just takes one. It just takes one incident. It takes one mistake for it really to just go downhill. In a lot of cases, you know, some of the mistakes may not be as hurtful. You know, if you kick out trying to make an aggressive pass and no one goes with you, you don't have the speed, you drop to the back of the line. All right, well that's fine. You can make it up with the draft. You're still with the pack. You're still able to make some moves. But when you've got incidences where, you know, you run up to the wall like Samuelson was earlier in the race today, or, you know, the incident towards the end of that second stage, those are hard to come back from. Even, you know, when it comes to pit lanes and pit stops, if you don't hit your marks when you hit that pit cone and that commitment line, it could be the end of your race entirely. You know, you've got a mountain to climb when you even get as far down as 5 seconds down the order. So, you know, these guys have had a lot of variables thrown at them, and I think, you know, the top 11 that currently sit on the lead lap have done a tremendous job of keeping with the lead lap cars. And, you know, with the front 4 currently running where they are, and I think also the number 24 of Kevin Steele just hanging back with them in the back of the pack there, letting them race as much as they need to. These guys have just shown their capabilities of getting through that adversity, and these guys are the ones to look out for throughout the rest of the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Drew. It's, you know, a lot of these guys that have these kind of not so great races, you don't see them going into the next one kind of down on their luck. You see them coming in with a plan, saying, okay, this is what happened last week, and this is what we're not going to do this week to make that better. And it's always great to see, because racing is not something that you're always perfect at. It's a very constantly evolving sport. There's a lot of different things that you can always learn and improve on to make yourself a better racer. It's, you know, to come in week in and week out and always try and make yourself just that much better, because there's always someone in the field that wants to be faster than you, that wants to be in front of you. So always trying to improve your craft and improve your skills, it's crucial in these series, and a lot of these drivers here prove that here week in and week out. You know, whether they come in one race and they finish last, and then next week they come in and finish first. It's all just a matter of mentality and preparation, I think.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on that point that you made, that it's a constantly evolving sport. You know, it really is. Every year or every other year, a lot of governing bodies for these motorsports leagues that you guys always love to watch and be a part of and get delved into, they make regulation changes pretty often. And even when it comes to simulation racing like this, no one is ever going to be perfect. No one is ever going to have it straight on every single time. No one is just picture perfect in every sort of way every race. So, that's just the culture of racing. That's how racing works. Things will work in your way. Some will work against you, but it's really all about, like you were saying, how you deal with that, how you bounce back, how you chat with your team to look over the tape and be like, okay, here's what you do different. Here's what we can do to adjust your setup and make it feel more comfortable for you while also being competitive. So I think that's a great benefit of all of these guys also having a bunch of teammates as well, and also just the community that's built within 100% Cup Series. The community helps each other out a lot. Everyone talks to each other in some sort of way to try and get a good idea of what can make everyone better. And I think that's great from not only just the racing community in general out in the real world, but also the sim racing community as well.
Yeah, Drew, you definitely are correct there. Every single race, these guys post-race, they're all coming together and they're taking a look at the race and they're observing what went wrong, what they can do better to improve it next race, and helping each other just kind of give each other tidbits, helping each other get their setups right, and figuring out what they need to do to improve their race. And that's just the great thing about these sim communities, about the racing community. It's the teamwork, even outside of your own team in racing. Everyone is always helping each other, trying to make one another better and just make the racing better in general. Without everyone working together and trying to just make the sport what it is, we wouldn't have the great racing that we have today. It's a very cumulative effort. There's no one team or one person out there that is kind of the shining star, if you will. There's also and as I say that, we had a little bit of wall contact there. Drivers getting a little too spicy coming out of, I think that was turn number 4. Little dicey here.
The number 77 of Dalton Mobley, who probably was not very happy with that kind of contact because he is now falling behind. And I want to make note as well, those guys did get up. That second pack got up, or at least a couple of them did. Dalton Mobley was one of those guys who was leading the pack, but might now have some damage that could hurt him. Tanner Noel now up into the mix with the top guys. Bryson Hicksonbaugh still having connection issues, and I think is falling back just a tad. Look at this pack, though. This is getting very wild in terms of lapped cars at this point in time, with just under 10 laps to go. I think it's 7 this point across.
Yeah, this is things are getting spicy really quick here, Drew. Things are quickly shaping up to be a very interesting final. I believe 8 laps here left to go. Cameron Stone still leading the field with Jonathan Delaney on his tail and Mike Floppy in third. A little bit of a switch up there. Dustin Hall, let's take a look at the number 1 machine. He's going to be in 6th currently, having worked his way back through the field to get back up into the front of the pack as well. Great to see him out here competing with the front field as well again. So we have still 8 laps left to go. It seemed, for some reason it feels like these laps go a little bit faster than they actually do. But we're on lap 7.
Sometimes, yeah. but no fault to Dustin Hall, but very, very unfortunate for Dalton Mobley as he is now in the pits. So unfortunate for him to see him go into the pits at this moment in time. He will no longer be able to finish this race, but look at this. Now 2 wide into turn 3 and 4 at this point. And I think Dustin Hall is looking to try and get a good little bump on these guys on the high line to try and get some momentum and pass his competitors up there in the top 5 spots.
Yeah, these guys are definitely throwing caution to the wind here as these guys are getting bumper to bumper, door to door going into these turns. It's getting spicy here. 6 laps left to go. I think we were both right earlier, Drew, that these final few laps here, they're going to be very interesting, very exciting to watch here. We have Sean O'Brien Jr. on your screen currently in that 65. He's going to be door-to-door currently with the 97 of Mike Floppy. Oh, and they're duking it out for 3rd position currently. Mike Floppy's going to take that 3rd position. Oh, boy. We only 6 laps left to go here, folks. It's going to be interesting. This is going to be exciting.
It's getting dicey, and Dustin Hall decides to opt to the low line behind the 24 of Kevin Steele, so he'll make sure to maybe try and make some more moves there. But you know, the question of who's going to utilize their tools more comes into play at this point. When you get side by side by a car that you are trying to pass, you know, who's going to utilize that side draft to pull that car in and be able to pass him? It's going to be especially difficult or interesting, might I say, to see what happens when it comes to those top 3 cars. Mike Floppy, currently in the middle of all of this. He's not even the 3rd car in line at this very moment. That's the number 79 of Matthew Gaskin. So he's just in the mix as a lapped car, and Mike Floppy's probably not necessarily happy, as John Delaney and Cameron Stone are currently just at the front of this pack. So, you know, who's going to utilize the tools? Who's going to make some moves when it comes down to these last 3 laps?
Yeah, you know, and I think for Mike Floppy right now, we've touched on this a little bit earlier, the fact that, you know, lap traffic is getting involved here in the front of the field, kind of sticking with this front pack. And normally I wouldn't mind this too much, and I'm sure these drivers normally wouldn't, but 4 laps left to go here. I'm sure Mike Floppy is fuming at his wheel, trying to navigate his way around that 09 and the number 79 machine as well. But hey, that's racing. It happens. It looks like Mike's trying his best to wiggle his way around those cars, but he just doesn't have enough speed. 4 laps left to go here, though. If I'm Mike Floppy, I don't think I would be too upset in his position. He's, you know, 3rd position, 3 laps left to go here. You kind of just have to read the field for what it is, and you know, just kind of accept the fact that you probably won't be able to make any big moves here, but anything can still happen. 3 laps left to go. There's still time for something to happen here.
Absolutely. And you know, even though Mike Floppy might not be in contention necessarily for the championship to this point, he still might want a race win here, and you see him trying to peek down the inside of that 09 at times, just to see if he's got the momentum, to see if he's got the ability to side draft that 09 and pull him closer so he can get closer to the leaders. But right now, there's nothing he can do. We saw Dustin Hall in the back there as well, trying to make some moves. He's now fallen back as, you know, he lost the draft, and Bryson Hixenbaugh right behind him. So sad to see him falling back, but with 2 laps left, it's all about those front 2 cars, Cameron Stone and John Delaney, and coming across the start-finish line is going to be white flag.
In an exciting final lap, it's going to be here as Cameron Stone and Jonathan Delaney take it around turn 4, coming out of turn 4 now, getting ready to pass that white checkered line and let that white flag fly. It's going to be a interesting final lap here today, but for everyone involved, it's been an exciting one. And oh man, for Jonathan Delaney, excellent race from him, being able to lead the race as long as he did and still finish out 2nd. Impressive for him. And Cameron Stone, great performance from him as well.
See if he makes a move here.
Things getting a little interesting here. Coming on to our final lap here, Jonathan Delaney looking like he's wanting to make a move here. A few other drivers looking like they want to make a move as well.
Hall. Yeah, Dustin Hall in the back. Look at him following the 24 of Kevin Steele. He might turn something into getting a place there as he moves up into P4 now, past Sean O'Brien Jr. Oh! And a big
wreck of cars here. Oh no.
Cameron Stone loses out to Jonathan Delaney crossing the line. Bryson Hicksonball comes across P3. What is this?
Oh my gosh. And we see, oh man. Oh, you see the 97 of Mike Floppy as well going across the finish line backwards. What a wild finish to
goodness.
this. To this. Let's see if we can get a quick replay on that incident here as we see it on our screens here. Got drivers getting involved into one another. Oh, just a bunch of carnage ensues from there.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh. But that's it for today's race. Wow.
Cameron Stone losing out to Jonathan Delaney. He got sideways. He got turned by Jonathan Delaney. That's not what he wants. And Bryson Hicksonball, even though he got collected in that Dustin Hall crash, still finishes P3. Unbelievable finish. I don't know what I just watched.
we're a little confuzzled here in the booth here. That was a wild finish to this race here as we're going to get ready to start our post-race interviews here. We're going to get our first driver up into the booth. Bryson Hicksonball in third in that number 63 machine. Let's see what he has to say about that finish here. Bryson, sir, can you read me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Bryson, that was an exciting race here today. We weren't exactly expecting you to finish out third here, but it seems like that final incident kind of worked in your favor here. What was going through your head when that happened?
First I pointed I had there and I had issues, but they're my issues, so I got to deal with the consequences of them. I was glad to just be able to just hang out in the back of the line there and stay up with the lead pack. And then for the ending there, tried to get the outside line to work a couple times, and then it just kept failing. So we just went for it at the end, and then it looked like somebody got turned from the bottom line and took out Dustin in front of me. And then I made it through that, and then Sean just came right across my nose, and I almost was clear of it, but he caught me, and then I just threw it in reverse, trying to get it to the start-finish line, and then had to put it back in first to get rolling again, and barely made it across the line, dragging across the wall. I have no idea how I am third, because there is definitely a lot of cars that were in front of me.
I mean, you somehow survived it. I mean, you even got collected in the incident with Dustin Hall, but even when you did get collected, you were still able to finish just ahead of John O'Brien Jr. there. I mean, this entire race, though, was you sticking with the front pack and being able to just put your car where you needed to be. You know, was there any kind of what kind of thoughts were going through your head during the entire race? Because it looked like you were just calm and composed, even when you had those connection problems.
Yeah, it was. Car was great. I was just trying to follow in line with the guys near me and waiting for our time. We had a couple guys had a plan of trying to see if we could pit first and break apart from the pack, because the pack was really, really slow in stage 3 before pit stops. We were probably going half a second a lap slower than we could have. And we knew that if we could pit without anybody else, we'd be able to jump in front and hopefully break away from the pack. It didn't end up working. More guys came with us than we expected. So at the end there, it was just work with who you had and see what could get done, but couldn't really do a whole lot in the outside lane, so just had to roll where you could.
Absolutely, Bryson. Now, before we let you go here today, is there anyone watching at home that you would like to give a thank you to or a shout out before we let you go here?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out all the family members and friends back home that are watching this. Probably not the most exciting race that you guys to watch, but I'm glad to do this every week and have something that I can share with them.
Awesome, Bryson. Well, we look forward to seeing you next week, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again. Look forward to seeing you next week, Bryson.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Hope to talk to you again.
See you, Bryson. All right, that was Bryson Hicksonbaugh in the number 63. Up next, Cameron Stone, our P2 setter for today in the number 57 machine. Let's have a chat with Cameron. Cameron, sir, can you read me?
Yes, sir.
Cameron, what an excellent race performance from you today. It was looking to be in your favor towards the last part of stage 3 there. You were leading first for quite some time, and then right at the end there, we had quite the shakeup happen, and you found yourself in P2. How did that feel, having that happen right at the end of the race?
Well, to be fair, I mean, I was trying to race hard with Jason Taylor for stage 2 and turned him. Didn't mean to, felt bad about it, but those things have a tendency to come back and bite you. Me and John have had our run-ins on the track before. I've cost him a race or two here and there, so it is what it is. I mean, the admins reviewed it. They were looking at, you know, whether he went under the yellow line or not, which I was never concerned about that. It's just, you know, I wasn't trying to block him or anything. I knew he was going to get inside. I felt like I left him the lane, but I don't know if it was netcode or what. Got my left rear, and there's nothing I could do from there. Just along for the ride. I guess he beat me by, I don't know, a couple thousandths or whatever it was. But, you know, it always comes down to me and John at these plate tracks. It's I mean, every single one, he's pushing me or I'm pushing him, and that stuff just happens at the end of these races, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, overall it seemed to be a pretty composed and really good race for you in general. Towards the start of the race, you were kind of sitting more towards the back of the top 10 there with John Delaney just sitting up there, calm and composed for the first stage. But then towards the second stage, you kind of came back and decided, you know, I was going to take over and I want to be up front. And you kind of did that for the majority of the final laps as well. I mean, was there kind of a shift in momentum for you at all, or was it just the pit stops that worked out for you? What kind of changed, if anything?
Well, it's these races when they changed the drafting package after I guess it was the first Talladega race this year. So the last two super speedway races have just been, you know, the bottom line is so overpowering and the side draft is tough. So the top lane has to have so many cars to get going. It's not really viable. So, yeah, we sped coming on pit road the first time. Well, actually, I didn't even hit pit road, so I didn't get a penalty. I just missed it altogether. And yeah, after that, we were just way in the back and just kind of rode in line until pit stops and pit sequence worked out. It was the same thing we were doing at Daytona, just you know, making up time on guys in the pits, and ended up getting back up there and pushed John clear in stage 2, and then he had damage, so he dropped back. And then when I got back to the front in stage 3, Bryson was in the front and he had a blinking problem, so he dropped back. So I never actually took the lead all night. So I mean, I led a bunch of laps, but I never actually took the lead. It was we made mistakes. We came into this race. Apex needed good runs out of everybody. 3 of us were below the cut line, and it didn't go that way. So I mean, finishing P2 was cool. I'm disappointed we didn't win. I'm also disappointed that the team didn't get the results they needed tonight.
Well, Cameron, you still put on a great race today, and hopefully going forward into the rest of the season, you'll be able to keep up this same pace, the same consistency. It's been great watching that 57 machine out there. You're doing a very fantastic job week in and week out. Before I let you go here tonight and celebrate a little bit, maybe just a little bit, you know, you earned that P2. Is there anyone watching at home that you'd like to give a thank you to or a shout out?
Yeah, got to give a shout out to Mom and Pops. They're always watching races. Sorry I didn't get it done this time. They always look forward to the plate races because we always do good in these. So, thanks to Carmen for not getting mad at me for spending all my time on my computer. Megan and Conrad should be watching. Thank you guys as well. Shout out to Kevin Steele for making beautiful paint schemes for me. Shout out to the Apex boys. We're gonna try to give him hell next week to get at least one of the other ones in to the round of 8. Shout out to John doing everything he could after he got his damage. Bryson coming home P3. I don't know how, but good job there. Thank you guys for putting on the broadcast, and hopefully everybody watches again next week.
Awesome, Cameron. Thank you for joining us in the booth tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That was Cameron Stone in the number 57 machine. And last but certainly not least, the man of the hour, Jonathan Delaney in the number 9. John, sir, can you read me?
I do. Yes, I do.
John, you had an absolutely incredible race here today. All through stage 1, you led pretty much the entirety of that stage, and then you found yourself kind of falling back a little bit during stage 2, as well as a little bit of stage 3. But you were able to work your way through the field and find yourself up in the front, and you were behind Cameron Stone for quite some time, putting a lot of pressure on that number 57 machine. And right at the tail end of the race, right across the finish line, it seemed to work in your favor, and you were able to get a P1. Man, what was going through your head before all that unfolded?
Well, yeah, we had a very up and down race. The entire race. We, you know, led we led all the laps till pit stops in stage 1. Came back out in the lead again. Won stage 1. That was an awesome battle for the stage 1 win there. And then stage 2 came around. I fell back to like 3rd, and I got ran over on pit road. That gave me 25 seconds of damage, which I really wasn't expecting to me to come back from that, because any damage you get here, like, doesn't matter how much, you're usually done for. Like, you're out of the draft, and you just can't keep up with pace. So I was really surprised I was able to keep up. It probably, I think it looks like I had rear bumper damage, so it wasn't nose damage, so it really wasn't that bad. But and then that last stage, pretty much everyone pitted at the same time, and caused a lot of confusion and on pit road. And coming off pit road, we just the strategy we were playing with Cam and Kevin and another guy, we just didn't execute it good enough, and we just were all mixed around. And myself, I was on a little bit higher tape. Cam was on low tape with damage, and then the people behind us were able to catch us because of they were taped up and more formed up than us. But that coming to the white line there, or to checkered, I knew I just had to get a run on Cam, and I wasn't expecting it to do it that way. In my head, I knew I was going to go high, and try and cut down low. But by the time I cut down low, and when I kind of had a nose on him, he came back down, and I turned him. But I mean, when you come to these play tracks, you just got to kind of expect that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's probably not necessarily the way you wanted to take the win, but a position and a win is one nonetheless. But overall, I mean, a strong showing from you at Talladega today. And I know you've said before as well that, especially in the pre-race interviews, that you're just looking to get a rebound race specifically for this race because of last time when you were at Daytona. So it's definitely a good showing from you today, but is in a second win when you're already on your way to the round of 8 is definitely nothing to scoff at, and you'll take it either way. But is there anything specifically you're just going to be preparing for when it comes to the Roval next week to prepare for the next round of the chase?
Probably a lot of preparation. I am probably by far the best at road courses. Bryson, he has decent speed. I won by 50 seconds last year at the Roval, so if we can do that again, I'd be very happy. That track though has changed a lot. There's a lot less grip, so maybe it'll suit me a little better than last time, because we had a lot of grip last time. But going into the Roval, I'm gonna try and go for the win and try and win all 3 races of the round of 12. That would be awesome if I could do that. So.
Awesome, John. Excellent race from you here tonight, man. It was very impressive watching you take it around Talladega here tonight. Now, before we let you go and celebrate your P1 finish, is there anyone watching that you would like to give a shout out to or a thank you?
Yeah, you guys, thank you guys for broadcasting. I can't wait to go back and watch this. It's going to be interesting. And I like to shout out to, or thank, oh my gosh, thank my mom and dad, my brother, Tanya, Bob, my grandma for watching. Let's see, shout out to Lockdown Racing, and everyone who helped put work into the set this week. It was insanely fast. We had pole by 700s, which doesn't seem a lot, but when you're at a super speedway, it is a very decent amount. I think we definitely had the fastest car on track all night. Shout out to Cam for working with me all night. I'd like to thank Shorba Racing Graphics for this paint. Let's see, Sparko Gaming, SimSeats, MPI, Maconi Setup Shop. For sponsorship wise, admins Kevin Steele and Mars Hickenbottom, and just thoughts to RJ Root for his dad who passed away. So that is all I have.
Awesome, John. Thank you very much for coming out, speaking with us here in the broadcasting booth. It was great having you here and great watching you race here today. Good luck into next week's race, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you in the broadcast booth again next week.
Yep, thank you guys.
See you, John. All right, everyone. That was Jonathan Delaney, our winner for today's race here at Talladega. Drew, for your first time here with the 100% Cup Series, what did you think of today's race?
Honestly, Mason, I was thrilled that I got to experience it with you guys up here in the booth. It was a great race, respectful race overall. A great community. It seems that that you guys have let me get my feet wet into. It's overall, I thoroughly enjoyed my time up here in the booth with you, Mason, and I'm looking forward to possibly doing some more. And to also just watch this great racing that these guys put on. It was fantastic just to watch all the green laps going by and just the different ways people were handling it. So, great job to all the drivers today, everyone who stuck it out, and everyone, who didn't make it through all the way to the end of the race. I'm looking forward to watching you guys bounce back. But yeah, overall, I appreciate you guys having me on the broadcast team as well, Mason.
Yeah, Drew, it was great having you. It was a fun broadcast. Given we didn't have a whole lot of action, so to speak, as far as cautions or people getting into one another. Like you said, Drew, very respectful race. Everyone was doing a very fantastic job of just keeping this green and clean the whole way through. So yeah, this was a great race to see, and it was great having you here tonight in the booth with me, Drew. Given that tonight's kind of an odd night for me as well, being the producer for this show tonight, but wow, we made it. We're here at the end of the race, Drew. We did it, and it's great. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed what they've seen. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe for 3 Wide TV. Check out all the action that they have week in and week out. My name is Mason Heimbaugh, joined alongside with Drew Akers from Downshift Esports. What an excellent race that we had here today with the 100% Cup Series. I hope you all enjoyed today's race and look forward to seeing you all next week.